Welcome to the 393rd episode of the Random Podcast from Heck. My name is Tony, and this is the podcast about random things in the world of entertainment, which includes movies, TV shows, and comic books. Big shout out to Andrew Loken. He is a big supporter of the show. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gman from Heck. Any amount you can commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the Secret Podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 minutes of podcast entertainment every single week. I've been doing some Amazing Spider-Man. I've been doing some Off My Mind, just random, comic book movie topics. Last week I went back to Fantastic Four from 1985, John Byrne era. And I'm open to suggestions, just extra podcast stuff that's not like with this regular weekly stuff. But if you can't commit to a monthly commitment, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gman from Heck. And you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or three. That's ko-fi.com/gman from Heck. And on the Patreon, some of those extra podcasts are available for purchase, single purchases. You don't have to commit. I have them set as the price of a virtual cup of coffee, so $3. But if you use the Patreon iOS app, Apple will charge you extra 30%. So just be aware of that. What is on for this week? This has been this is going to be a busy week. So let's see, not waste too much time with this, me rambling. The movie feature is Mickey 17, which is a very interesting movie. I mean, it's definitely a movie that I want to see again, because Bong Joon-ho, his movies are, there's a lot of layers to it, and we'll get to it. I don't want to, start talking about it now. We have Daredevil, Born Again. That is the title of it. I feel like this is a title that I always messed up. I forget what I was calling it, so I believe that is a title. 2 episodes have dropped, so we're going to talk about those. We got Cobra Kai, and with Cobra Kai, I'm doing just one a week for 2 reasons. One, because there's so much to talk about and so much for me to watch, and 2, because we're at the end of the show, and there's a lot of crazy things, and they're really building things up, and I'm getting excited, just watching 1 episode per week, and I still have no idea how it ends. So we got 1 more after this week. So we got the penultimate episode. Then we got Prime Target, which I think that's the penultimate episode. I believe all episodes are out of that for that now. You can watch that. And then we got another Severance, and in comics and the news. So with the news, it was weird. It's kind of like a light week for news. I'm not really sure why that is, and it seems like it's mostly like Russo brothers news, and I'm assuming the reason for that is because that movie. What's that movie? I don't even know what the movie's called. There's a Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown movie directed by the Russos. So they've been asked a lot about Marvel stuff, which you're not supposed to do that. I mean, it just seems weird if you're like doing a interview for movie X or whatever this is, you can't ask about the other things, because even though that's what everyone wants to know about, like Avengers, about Doomsday and Secret Wars. I'm surprised that people get away with it, because usually the handlers or whoever, they make it very clear, don't ask about this, or they say, okay, you got 2 minutes or 1 minute or 5 minutes, and yeah. So, I would think they would say, or maybe they're like, sure, we can answer a question or 2. But the thing, it seems rude, because the Russos, assuming this is how it all went down, they are there to promote this current movie, which I don't know if I can bring myself to watch it. And if you've been listening, you know why. But let's just get into some of that. They basically, one of the important things is, how are they going to film these movies without stuff leaking out? And I'm not talking about actors accidentally, spoiling things or leaving scripts out, or having their phones on or something like that. But the most annoying thing, and I know a lot of people like it, is the amateur photographs or the paparazzi photos, where people will have their telescopic lenses or whatever, and they take pictures when they're filming, and they usually look like crap, because Sometimes they're not even the final suits. Sometimes they're wearing harnesses underneath, so it just looks bulky, doesn't fit right. And then they smooth things out with CG or post production or whatever. So when we see this, it's like, oh, that looks so bad. I mean, that's what happened with Superman. People were looking at that, and it's like that wasn't the final version. I get that. I mean, it's great that people are excited. They want to see this, but I'm sure also some of it is people want to be able to insult it because there are. It's sad that there's so many people that just want to be negative and tear things down. I just don't understand it. People they want to be negative. So the Russos apparently have a plan, and one of the things is I guess they're going to be filming a lot on sound stages, so that will prohibit from people seeing stuff like that. But it's just, I don't know, just we're all excited, we all want to see it, but just wait, because it just ruins things. And what if Herbie the Robot shows? Well, that's not a good example, but what if there's some surprise and then it leaks out and then it's and I every once in a while, my Instagram feed, I'll see those reaction videos for Endgame or Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire, and just seeing the theaters just explode and applause and cheers. It's you lose that when people are taking these crap pictures. So I don't know. Hopefully they can keep everything under wraps. But apparently, Robert Downey Jr. is going to be writing some of Doctor Doom's backstory. Okay, that's interesting. I wonder what the reason is. Is that something he insists on, or something that he wants to do? Is it just for him to get into character, and how much is it he have complete control over the backstory? And I don't know. So, I mean, until we see more or see anything, we don't really know. But what about, speaking of Chris Pratt earlier, the bad news is he might not be able to be in Avengers Doomsday. Because he's going to be working on Terminal List Season 2. That's the Prime show, I guess. I've never seen the first one. And I don't know if I'm trying to think if I started watching, if I start watching it, because I know he had that movie, which I don't think it's the same thing. But yeah, so it's questionable whether he's going to be available. How much would he be available? And because I think they're talking about with Doomsday and Secret Wars that they're probably going to try filming them back to back. So I don't know. The Russos have also kind of teased the runtime, which seems like a weird. So when I first saw this, I'm like, oh, cool, interesting. But then I was like, wait, they haven't done a single bit of filming. So how could they know exactly, even if you have a script, and do they even have a full script? I mean, if Robert Downey Jr. is writing the backstory, well, maybe, but probably not. So you can probably kind of gauge how long, okay, here's the script, here's the screenplay, here's what's going to happen. And, this shot of this, over, camera panning over the city. But there's no way you can estimate it exactly until you see. And if someone delivers their line, are they going to? What if they talk really fast, or what if they pause and talk slower, or enunciate? So yes, as directors, you can direct them, say, hey, let's speed that up. But they basically, I forget which one said, if I was a betting man, they're probably based off of how Endgame and Infinity War was. They said Avengers Doomsday will probably be 2.5 hours, and Secret Wars will probably be 3 hours. That's fine with me, because the more the better. The Russos, speaking of Chris Pratt, and see, this is what's silly. This is all coming from, I'm assuming, this press junket. And they were asked, well, what about Millie Bobby Brown? Have you, considered her for a Marvel movie or something like that? And they're like, everything we do, we consider her for everything, and because she's such a great actress, and blah, 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 all this stuff like that. And there was also, when I was going through my Instagram feed, and before I could swipe away from it, or the main, it might have been Entertainment Weekly, there was just a comment that she apparently hasn't seen any Marvel movies, which is fine. That's I wouldn't hold that against them. Some people just don't care. There are people who are in the movies, like Gwyneth Paltrow, who have never seen the movies, or a lot of them. And I mean, that's a little different, because some people are like, okay, I was there, I don't need to see it. And even if you're part of a big franchise, you probably have read the script, so you know everything that's happening. You just don't need to see it because you're there. Just like, when I do these podcasts, I don't really listen to them because I'm experiencing it. And, so yeah, she said that she hasn't watched any of them, but apparently her husband, what's his name, Bon Jovi, he's apparently like a huge movie fan or something, because Millie Bobby Brown likes to go out in nature and stuff, something like that. Yeah. There's a rumor, of course, that so I guess Spider-Man 4 is going to take place in between, or it's going to be released. Not going to take place in between. It's going to be released between the Avengers movies. So there is a rumor that it is going to be a direct sequel to Avengers: Doomsday. And is what truth, facts is there? And if the Russos are saying, yeah, we're keeping secrets locked up, and then someone's like, oh, this is going to happen. You can make an educated guess just because that's how the schedule is going to be, but it doesn't mean anything. And who knows? These movies don't necessarily come out sequentially. It could be like, hey, events from this movie take place before this or whatever, or I don't know. I mean, you would think that they're going to do their best to make it line up. I'm still curious, and how does Captain America: Brave New World and Thunderbolts line up? Because spoiler, I don't think it's a spoiler, because in Captain America, I hope you've seen it by now, but okay, well, let's just say this without spoiling. Well, it might be a spoiler if you haven't seen it. So let's just say this. If you've seen Captain America: Brave New World, you know what I'm talking about. And it's something to do with Thunderbolts. So my question is, does Captain America: Brave New World take place before Thunderbolts? Because we see someone in Captain America, and like what they're currently doing or attempting to do or trying to do, and where they're going to end up in Thunderbolts, or like something must have happened between them. So I'm curious about that. But speaking of Thunderbolts, asterisk, there's one news thing. It's like, why is Avengers Tower in the movie, and who controls it, and why does it have a different name? And I thought that was all obvious, or maybe didn't that come out already? And I don't know if that's a spoiler as to who bought it, because where I'm a little confused. Apparently, it seems after the Avengers movies, the Avengers have disbanded, but it seems like wasn't going to be like Captain America and Falcon and Vision, and weren't they all kind of hanging out? But I guess it never. Maybe they're like, we're not going to do it. Avengers Tower basically wasn't being used, and with Tony Stark passing, did it just get sold off? Because it's got to be expensive real estate, and whether it was Pepper Potts or Happy Hogan or something, they're like, hey, yeah, we're not going to use that. There's no Avengers, and so let's just get rid of it. Hopefully they secured all the stuff, which I think they maybe moved it all off site. I don't know. But anyways, what I was going to say about Thunderbolts asterisk is Florence Pugh is described in the movie as kind of like a A24 assassin movie or something like that, like in the Marvel universe. And it's like, okay, she was in an A24 movie, so she would know. So that I'm really excited for that. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Other news, non-Marvel news, is so I must have missed this. There's a Starfire animated series coming out. I've seen nothing for this. I don't know when it was announced. It's apparently going to be, because someone asked on Threads, someone asked James Gunn, is like, so is this going to be like canon to the DC universe? Because with Creature Commandos, we know that is, and so forth. Basically, he's like, no, it's like an Elseworlds. It's more of a family. It's geared towards a younger group or something like that. So those type of shows are like Elseworlds, or they have nothing to do with the DC universe, which would make sense. And but apparently Starfire was seen in Creature Commandos, just didn't speak. I think, did they show Tamaran? Maybe. I'm curious about the Starfire show and like what that's going to be like. And there's no release date for that yet, so I guess they're still working that out. And then the last bit of news, and this is like a horrible way to end the news, another rumor. I don't know. I don't know what to make of these rumors. And again, I feel like I should be keeping track of these rumors. So then when they're either proven correct or proven wrong. But apparently Jesse Plemons might be being considered for Beast in X-Men. And, I've talked about this. I have no idea where they're at with that. Are they actually casting? Do they have a script yet? Do they know? I don't know what stage they're at with that. So we shall have to wait and see. But that is going to be comics for the week. I always mess that up. Let's get... No, see, I did mess it up. I do this all the time. This is not the first time. That is going to be the news for the week. Now, with comics, I have a feeling like I didn't read anything. I haven't checked Dynamite and like some of the other publishers. At Image, there wasn't a lot that I read. There was Hyde Street #4. This is... I don't even know how to describe this comic. It's basically... Hyde Street's like a place you don't want to go. And there's like these people who have been kind of condemned there. And it's sort of like a hell, like limbo place. And what they need to do in order to escape and return to their lives is like deliver like 10,000 souls or something like that, which is like insane. And we see, you got that little kid Boy Scout. There's a guy with the X-ray glasses. So you got some really cool designs. But this issue, we see, what do they call him, the Marquee Monster or something like that. He's a actor who basically is like an old. I think he was like talking about being cast in Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein's brother or something like that. This guy, he's just playing Frankenstein, but he wants to get like a different. He wants to have like an actual part in a movie, because with playing Frankenstein's monster, actually, as he points out, is you got to sit hours in makeup, and you don't really have any lines or anything. But he, spoiler, obviously he gets pulled into this, and that doesn't go too well for him. It does look like with Image, that was pretty much all I read. There was Walking Dead Deluxe #108, which I'm behind on that. Of course, I gotta get on that, so that this doesn't happen again where I just lose control. That was it. Kaya Volume 4, you should be reading Kaya. Red Coat by Jeff Johns, Volume 1 is out. So that was all I read there. What I'm noticing is at Dynamite, there was apparently a Herculoids comic. So this is kind of crazy. I'm going to have to check that out. I'm going to have to find a copy. Tom Snigowski and looks like Craig Russo. Oh, Craig, I think I like his art. See, what has he done? Batman Beyond, Gotham Adventures. Building on the success of the critically acclaimed best-selling Space Ghost series, Dynamite Entertainment is proud to bring another beloved Hanna-Barbera classic to readers this February. No, not quite. The Hercules. Hidden in the furthest reaches of space, the planet of Amzat is legendary for its fabled riches, and for the terrible fates that befall anybody who seeks to exploit them. This is a very long solicit. But if you've ever seen the series, it's interesting. So I'm curious. I really want to check that out. It's like, what is the tone going to be like? Is it going to be a little kind of light and Hanna-Barbera-ish, or is it going to be like serious, or is it going to be dark? Is it going to be gloomy? But that's pretty interesting. And congrats to Dynamite for getting the license on it. Oh, and Hercules #10. Man, I missed Hercules. I didn't read that, so I need to read that. Terminator 5 came out. Thundercats 13. Man, like everything at Dynamite came out this week. And here I thought I had a decent handle on things. I will need to check those out and get back to you on that. So then at Marvel Comics, okay, so Avengers 24, I believe, is not out this week. So I got a copy of that early, so let's not talk about that. There was Doctor Strange of Asgard, #1. And this technically is a One World Under Doom tie-in series, and just because Doctor Strange, he goes to Asgard because he wants a job, and he has to do. He's no longer Sorcerer Supreme, so he goes to Thor, and Thor's like, hey, Doctor Strange, blah, blah, because he's friendly, and he tells him to go to, I forget what her name is, who's kind of like in charge of like the magic stuff. And what was interesting, since I don't know what's going on with Thor, because I haven't been reading Immortal Thor, but he mentioned something how, because Loki's not here. So I'm like, what happened to Loki? Is Loki, did he die? Did something happen? But no, apparently what I picked up from reading through this issue is he was banned from Asgard. So I don't know what he did. I don't think I know what he did. And Thor banished him. But then something like serious happens. And so we kind of got like a mystery going on where I'll just say someone gets killed and we clearly see who did it. But then the person's like, I didn't do it. And maybe they didn't do it. So, because I'll have to see what's going to happen in the next issue. So there's that. There was an issue, Immortal Thor 21 came out, and I'm not reading it. We're supposed to be getting to like the final days of Thor. Didn't we already see that? I'm not reading that. There was What If Mickey and Friends Became the Avengers. I mean, that could be fun to read, but I don't have time, sadly. Moon Knight number 6. So Moon Knight is fighting this dude, this drug dealing dude. He's got this new drug. He's did all this stuff. He's powerful, and it turns out he's more powerful than Moon Knight realized, and Mark realized. And they just kind of settle things. They're like, let's fight, and winner takes control or whatever. And last issue, things did not go well for Mark. It's like, guess who died again, or did he? So, like, what's Khonshu going to do? And so this was a kind of interesting issue with that. And just like the dynamic between, Mark Spector and Khonshu, so I don't want to spoil anything more than that. We had some X-Men books. So let me see. The first part was, we got this X-Men Hunt crossover. From what is going on is what we saw with the last crossover between Uncanny X-Men and X-Men. What's the other X-Men? The Jed McKay X-Men, where they go to this Grey Malkin prison, and it turns out Professor X is locked up there. And so what this crossover? This is crossing over into everything, every single X-Men book. It seems like, and he escapes. So in the first issue, in Uncanny X-Men 11, we see basically Xavier's daughter, Xavier and Lilandra's daughter, is like the Empress, and there's a group of members of the Shi'ar Empire or whatever who feel that she is like the false Empress, because they're calling, I don't know if they actually call her a bastard or whatever, she's false, because I'm assuming because her father is not he's a human, so there's that. Or, I mean, are they actually married? Are they betrothed? I don't know what their relationship status is. So they basically, they're going after her. And, are they just going to kidnap her? Are they going to kill her or whatever? So Xavier's like, I need to escape. And it's almost like he's taking his sweet time, because this group is on the ship where she's at. I forget her name, and he's just because then the second part. So this is the first issue. Let's see. The second part is was in NYX, I think. NYX number 2. So Xavier goes from upstate New York, and then he goes to the city, and he goes to like the NYX place where they're hanging out, and they're like, no, you need to get out of here because, he's so dangerous and everything like that. But the reason he's dangerous is he apparently has this tumor in his brain, and he may not be able to control his powers, or it could be, I don't know if it spreads or something like that. But it's like, is that it? Is Xavier destined to die like soon? I don't know if I buy that, but
he's wanted, and for crimes against whoever, humanity, they're like, you need to go, but some people decide to help him. And then the third part that came out this week was Storm, which I haven't been reading that because I think I mentioned, I thought it was kind of like an out of continuity series, because in Storm's in the Avengers, it's like she's an Avenger, she's in her own book too. And reading through this issue, I'm like, what the heck is going on? She apparently has like this big floating city or something like this, the sanctuary. I don't even know who's supposed to be staying there. And Xavier basically comes to her and she's like, you shouldn't be here, whatever. She makes him a meal because she's like, this is probably gonna be your last meal because you're on the run. And then some X-Men come. They were able to track him down, and they're like, we need to bring you in because, it's not safe and stuff like that. So they start fighting Storm. Now, apparently, the other thing I didn't realize is Storm's been amped up. She's been made kind of, not necessarily a herald, but it's something, I should look it up, but with like, I think it was Eternity. So she's got new powers. And so if, as if she wasn't powerful enough as it is, now she's got this huge boost. And the X-Men, they're like, well, Storm, if you're protecting him, whatever, we're gonna fight you. And it's almost like they're like, oh, there's her floating city. Let's take it down. But it's like, wait, are there any people there? And it's just, it's just a kind of annoying how, because, So we'll see where this is gonna go. The next part 4. So that's weird. And it's how many parts is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I guess it's only 8 parts. But so far in 1 week, we have 3 parts, 3 out of 8. So the next part is in X-Men 13. So that was Uncanny X-Men, NYX, and Storm number 6. Then, Scarlet Witch came out. Spectacular Spider-Man, issue 13. I usually end up picking this up, looking at this, and then I regret it. So I didn't get this. I didn't read this. And it's just, I don't know what's going on. It's so weird. How can it not be more entertaining when you got Spider-Man, you got Peter Parker and Miles Morales together, but it's just something's off about it. Spider-Gwen, oh wait, I didn't read this. I should have read this. So it was like Spider-Gwen and Ghost Rider. I was like, oh wait, I just read, because I ended up reading that TVA issue, or I kind of skimmed through it. I'm not loving it, but because Gwen, Ghost Spider's in it. And then this, I don't know if this is crossing over from that, because Thor's on the cover. I was like, oh, the next issue's out already. But this, no. So I'm really curious about that cover, like what the heck is going on. So I'll definitely have to check that out. Then there was Ultimates, what issue? Issue 10. And I was reading this, and then it got to be, it's like time, and then I'm like, I'm not really... Ultimates is my favorite. So if we're talking about the Ultimate Comics, I love Ultimate Spider-Man. That is amazing. Ultimates is pretty good usually. I didn't love this issue, and I'm not really sure what it was. Maybe because there's like Red Skull stuff, and I don't want to spoil. Someone else was in here who may or may not be alive. And then like Ultimate Wolverine, I'm not super crazy about that. And then Ultimate X-Men, I'm intrigued by it, but it just feels so like out of continuity, and just because of time, I stopped reading that. So yeah, there's an interesting thing here when when they're fighting Red Skull, there's kind of like a big reveal at the end. It's like, okay, are we going to see more of this? Because that was pretty crazy. There is also Web of Spider-Verse New Blood, and I believe, this is an issue. How many pages is this? It must be like one of those like oversized issues, because there's the Web Heart, Spider Hulk, Count Parker, Spider Prowler, and Spider Toy. With Spider Toy is by Chris Eliopoulos, so that's probably going to be fun. I didn't read that. And then the last thing at Marvel was Wolverine number 7, and I think Romulus is in here, and there's the Adamantine, which I don't even know what's going on, and I mentioned it to my buddy he didn't love this issue, and it just feels weird that I'm not reading a Wolverine comic, because I've always loved Wolverine, and something, I don't know, it's just I guess one of the things that I thought was weird is reading the first issue of this. It's like Wolverine wants to be alone. He wants to be in Canada and stuff like that. But he's also in the Gail Simone X-Men book where he's calling Rogue Moonbeam for some reason. I still don't know where that came from. I feel like I totally missed something. And it's like, wait, is he being alone, or is he hanging out on this like farm or whatever with Rogue and Gambit and Jubilee and these kids? So my question is, where's the I got this thing about the continuity, and where does the Wolverine series fit in with that, or does it? And that just annoys me when, it's if you just make it clear. And that's all I ask. And if it's out of continuity, that's fine. If it's taking place in the past, if it's taking place in the future, but I don't know. And it just seems weird when we're used to like Superman having multiple titles, or Spider-Man, but I don't know. I think you can't overdo it, because I'm assuming I'm not the only one that's like, what is going on? This doesn't make sense. At DC, it didn't look like there was a whole lot that came out. I definitely didn't read a lot. JSA number 5, and so I was reading this. I did not love this issue, and part of the thing is, it's weird. I do like Jeff Lemire's writing, but I've never been like the biggest JSA fan. And the only time I've really, really, really enjoyed JSA is when Jeff Johns is writing it. So, I don't know what it is about it. And maybe it's also just like some of the characters he uses, and kind of like the tone of the stories and everything. Even though there's been some serious incidents and stuff happening in the Jeff Johns stories, it's always been kind of light. There's always been like a big sense of family. So it's just been fun and just full of heart, it seems like, even though a lot of times there's bad things happening. With this, the group that we have, all the different members that are present, they're kind of, I don't feel it's as cohesive as what we've seen before, and that's fine, because we have an interesting mix of different characters, and there's a lot of potential for different things like subgroups, and then we also got like the Infinity Inc. mentioned and Incorporated. So it's like I'm a little confused what's going on, and then there's like Jade and Obsidian, which I'm not like an expert on them. I don't know a whole lot from them. The only stuff I really know is like the James Robinson, the times he's written them, and then we have all the villains are like trying to kidnap everyone and trying to do all this stuff, and yeah, so I don't know. And that, when you get that much doom and gloom, like Carter Hall is like in hell or somewhere like that, or some facsimile of hell. So that's kind of dreary. It is interesting who he meets there. This girl who she doesn't remember who she is, but she kind of has a name, and he's like, "Where'd you get that or hear that name before?" And so I don't know, but something's just not super vibing with me. And I mean, I'm going to keep reading it, but yeah. Secret Six #1. This was another weird. It's like, okay, where are we coming up with this? Because it's Secret Six, and I'm sure, I would imagine there are some hardcore Secret Six fans that are like, what the heck are you doing here? Because this is not your traditional Secret Six. I mean, you got Connor Kent here, and you got Dreamer, and I guess we're going to have Deadshot, but it's just, and yeah, so I don't know where this is going to go, but the main reason they're getting together is Amanda Waller ends up missing. She's locked up from the, I don't even remember that story arc was called, because I'm trying to wait, what was it? Absolute Power, I think it was. So she's locked up, but I think she ends up disappearing. So like, where is she? And It's like, oh boy, here we go. I thought we were done with her, but apparently not. Oh, we also have that Jay McNamara, which I don't care for him. He's just such a chip on his shoulder, which whatever, he's got a reason for it. But yeah, Justice League Adam Project. I feel like I should go back and read this because I have no idea what this is about. Birds of Prey, issue 19. We kind of had like two stories going on. We have Black Canary and Sin, and then we got like some stuff with the Constantine stuff with Big Barter and Cassandra Cain. So that there's like some fun stuff happening there. So you should check that. With the stuff with like Sin and the entity thing that she's merged with, it's like there's stuff there. Then we have Batgirl issue 5. This was a kind of a weird, not necessarily trippy issue, but because Cassandra Cain's with her mom, with Lady Shiva, and so there's just a lot of weird stuff happening here. But that's all I read. There was a Nice House by the Sea, which I haven't been reading those, even though I like the Nice House by the Lake. There's Shazam 21, and I just had to stop that because I was not digging, the attitude that Freddie had, and I don't know, it wasn't entertaining for me. And is it gotten any better? Let me know, because I do want to start reading it again. I should check it out. And then there was Two-Face issue 4. I haven't read any of that. That's another one I'm curious about. Poison Ivy's at issue 31, and again, that is awesome. But I'm not reading that. And so that is going to be the comics. I didn't read a whole lot this week, I feel like. So that's going to be comics for a week. All right, Severance Season 2, Episode 7. Chick-Hi Bardo. I don't think that's how you say it. Man, this was a cool episode. It was actually, I think it was directed by the cinematographer or something like that. So it definitely has a different feel to it. And it's basically, who is Gemma? Like, what is her story? And Gemma and Mark, and how they got together. And also, finally, we get to see the testing floor. So spoilers for that here. So let's just get into it. So we see Gemma's like walking outside. She has longer hair, so obviously it's a flashback. And just like they're probably at the school they taught at. And then we see, he's almost unrecognizable. It's Mark. He's I don't know how to describe it. He's a little more, sort of a little more clean cut. He has like a slight beard, and his hair is just neater and everything, and make it shorter. I don't know. It's just but he's grading like papers or something like that while they're donating blood. Gemma's like in the little cot thing next to him. So I'm assuming this is like when they first met, right? He tries to look at what she's looking at, and he asks like, "What do you got there?" And she's like, "Themes of religious conversion in Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich." And he's like, "Oh my God, spoiler alert, please." And she just kind of chuckles. She's like, "What about you?" She's like, are you reading? He's like, "Me?" He's like, "Well, this is a real treat. All Quiet on the Western Blunt, drug use by enlisted soldiers during World War I." And she's like, "No, stop." He's like, "No, that's what it is." And she's like, "Kid's a genius. You should flunk every other child." He's like, "I couldn't agree more." And she chuckles. And then they kind of stare at each other, and he's like, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And she's like, "Gemma." And he says, "Mark." And then they kind of like awkwardly like shake hands because of the IV, in their arms, and they can't really cross whatever. She's like, "Nice to meet you, Mark." And he's like, "You too." And then we see Gemma, or is it Miss Casey? She's on the testing floor. I think it's Gemma, right? Yeah. And there's like a white background. She sits. She almost seems like kind of glassy-eyed. Blood is like taken out. She's with this. At first, I was like, "Is this a doctor?" This lady who she's with, because she takes 2 vials of blood, and Gemma's hair is up, so it's like hard to see. Like, is it cut short? So is this now? Is this a flashback? And then the lady is like, "Gemma, where did you go?" Which that comes up again later. Someone says that. And then she comes out of her daze, and she just looks at her, and she just kind of smiles. So this lady, I don't think I recognize her right away. It was Sandra Bernhardt, and she's actually credits list her as a nurse.
So then we see Gemma and Mark are lying in bed. So it's obviously a flashback. It's a close up of her eyes and his eyes. Then it shifts to now. Asal is shining a light in Mark's eyes that checks his dilation, or whatever. And she's like, he'll be okay. She's like, there might be some deficits. Hopefully nothing long term. And Devin's like, are you a doctor? Like, do we need an ambulance? And she's like, can you answer one of my questions, please? She's like, do we need an ambulance? And she's like, no, he's going to sleep for a while. And Devin's like, okay, how long? And she's like, hard to say. We'll need some equipment from downstairs. And she's like, are you clumsy? And Devin's like, what? Why do you have equipment in Mark's basement? She's like, your brother's reintegrating. And Devin's like, no, he's not. And Asal's like, I know that was troubling. And Devin's like, okay, I can tell you're smarter than me, so forgive me if I say this like super plainly, but if you give one solitary thought to messing with my brother again, I will throw you off a fudging bridge. And she's like, Devin. And she's like, we don't do that again. And Asal's like, we'll discuss it later. And she's like, nope, no, it's settled. Fudging law. So I'm like, okay, just accept it. The end. She's like, it's what he wants. And Devin's like, what he wants is to know whether Gemma's alive or not. And Asal's like, she is. And Devin's like, please don't mess with me. And Asal's like, she is alive. Devin kind of lets that sink in. She's just like, because there was like no confirmation before. So back to Gemma with the Xander Bernhardt, the nurse. Temperature is taken 97.6. Her blood pressure, and like the equipment says like lumen on there, like on the little gauge. You see the name. So it's like, what did they make? They make like everything. Her like weight's recorded. We don't see it. Her eyesight's checked. But it's weird. Like when there's an eye chart, and like the chart next to her is a chart with like baby lambs and like different like already facing up or down or upside down, sideways, something like that. There's this other weird machine. She's asked if she's eaten today. She's like, yes. And then has she done her reading? And she says 50 pages. Then she's like holding two like big smooth stones or something like that. And then she's asked calisthenics, and she's like, yes. And then the nurse is like, if you were caught in a mudslide, would you be more afraid of suffocating or drowning? And she like thinks about it, and she's like, drowning. So the doctor looks at the readings on the dial as she answers. She looks at Gemma, she nods, and Gemma hands the stones back. And then Gemma asks, how many rooms today? And the nurse is like, 6. So Gemma gets up, she walks to this like other room, like just, in this little area. There's like a bed and a bathroom. So this must be where she's staying or where they're keeping her. She opens a closet, and there's like one outfit in there. There's like this burgundy dress, like shoes and accessories. So it looks like it was basically selected for her. And then she whispers, she's like, poop. So then we see her dressed, her hair is down so we can see it's short. She walks to the door, she walks out, and the nurse is there. They go down this long hallway. And it's like a white hallway, but not quite the same as the regular, like the MDR like hallways on the severed floor. So one door they pass says Allentown. So that was in like the list of things like in the computer, work computers, like the files. Another is labeled Cairns, which is also on the list. So they pass Drainsville, Sienna, I think Sienna was listed, Loveland, Tumwater, I think it said, and then they stop at Wellington. And the nurse is like, ready? And Gemma just looks at her, and there's like this in kind of like an indented hand scanner thing for the nurse to put her hand in there, and this little needle like pops down like on the middle finger, takes a tiny it's like a little tiny needle, goes and just takes blood, and she's like, ah. So there's no doorknob, whatever. The door just slides open, and Gemma enters. After she goes through, like she like severs. She's changed as she walks through the door. So she looks around, and then she kind of goes deeper into the room, and there's like a dental chair there. And there's a man whistling with a cart with dental equipment. So I don't know if this is the guy from the other episode that went to get the dental stuff. I mean, could be. Maybe he went there and now he's coming here. So we're kind of seeing like when this took place. But what's weird is in the other episode, it's like they really went out of their way not to show his face. Like as he's walking, there's like a shelf that was perfectly covering it. But here we see his face, and it's like, okay, you're just a dude. I don't know if I'm supposed to recognize you from anything, because I didn't, unless I'm just like being a dope. So he looks at her. He's like, there she is. She looks at him. She's like, can I please get a break just for a little while? And he's like, but it's been 6 weeks. And, so she's like, I was just here. And so obviously because of the severed floors, she
thinks she was just there, but she wasn't. He's like, I know, nobody likes a dentist. I should have been an accountant like my mom wanted. He kind of chuckles. She just stares at him. He's like, please, have a seat. So she reluctantly sits back in a chair. He's like, excellent. And he shines like the overhead light in her face, and it's like really bright. And then, he has a light on his goggles, whatever. He's like, now, let's see how we're doing. So she's turned a little to her side. It's like, is she scared or whatever? He's like, open wide, please. He brings a dental pick towards her mouth. And, she opens, but then she's like severing out and she's back in the hall. So it's like, we don't see like what he did. It's like, did he drill cavities? Did he yank any teeth? Did he just give her cleaning? We don't know what he did, because as she comes out, her jaw is like hurts. And she's just like, feeling the face hurt, her, jaw on the outside. And she's like, how long was I in there? The nurse is like, 2 hours. So what kind of dental procedure takes 2 hours? So they start walking, and then they walk past a room marked Cold friggin' Harbor. So Mark's still out on the sofa. And again, I don't know if these are necessarily happening like concurrently, but because, this is probably from a couple episodes ago or whatever. So Devin's at his side, and she's like, I need you back, my lady. She's like, please come back. Then we get just like weird transition, and we kind of like slide into his mind. And we see Mark in the elevator. Obviously, it's a flashback. He's more clean cut. And he's wearing a brown suit, so it's not the severed elevator. He walks down the hall, so I'm assuming it's like Gemma's like department office, something like that. And he has like the smirk on his face. He knocks and enters. She's working at a desk, when she sneezes, and he's like, "That was fun last night." And she agrees. She apologizes. She's like, "I have a lecture at 3. Her notes are all over the place." He's like, "That's okay." He's like, "I brought you something." There's like this plastic container, or like a few, like almost like several containers stacked and like wrapped with like a ribbon. And she's a little confused. And he says, it's an ant farm. He's like, "Last night you said you liked ants." So, and she's looking at him. She's like, "I said I like plants." And he's like, "Plants." And there's like a few plants like around her office. She's like, "I hate ants." And he's like, "Oh, poop." She's like, "But I love farms." And he's like, "Good." So I'm not really sure what that was about, with the farms, whatever. And he didn't seem too upset. I don't know if he messed up on purpose or whatever. Then it switches to another day. So he's in his office working, and he's like, he says he's behind, and she's kind of like kissing and hugging on him, and she's like, "Well, I'm not here." And then so it must be like their home office, because there's like a crib in a box, and she like sees that, and he's like, "Oh, it was on sale." And she's like, "Well, who's going to put it together?" He's like, "I am." And he's like, "I happen to be quite handy." And she's like, "No, you're not." He's like, "What?" She's like, "How dare you?" And she's like, "Handsy." Like he was handsy, but not handy. So then there's like more flashes, different day, and like music's playing. He's working, grading, whatever, while she's reading books. And then they're out together, like by flowers, and or like or like not a forest, but like whatever, something. She's like watering plants and flowers around the house. Then they're in the woods, and they're dancing, they're doing dishes, more flowers, more dancing. And then we get to see the scene, which is really kind of weird. It's a dinner scene with Devin and Rickon, and it's what's weird is to see Mark, because he's like a different Mark. Because when Mark is with him, he's just like so bleh, but here he actually has like a personality and everything. They're talking about like, I think like rock climbing. I think it might be at the same place that they went out on their Audi, their whatever thing, their Ortbo, whatever. Because Rickon's been climbing since middle school or something like that, he says. He's like, "Well, what can I say?" He's like, because they're like, "You're crazy. What's wrong with you?" or whatever. And he's like, "Well, outdoorsmanship courses through my veins," which seems weird. He doesn't seem like an outdoorsman type. Devin tries pouring some wine in Gemma's glasses. Mark and Rickon are just like going on and on about something. But she covers it, and she like shakes her head. And Devin's kind of confused. And then they kind of talk. So is she pregnant, trying to get pregnant? So she's not drinking. Then it shifts to Gemma's in the dark, and then she's in the bathroom, and she's like in pain, and she's like kind of like bent over by the sink. Then she gets in the shower, and there's like blood by her legs. And then she just kind of squats, like, curls up in the shower, like she's still dressed. And Mark comes in, and he's like, "You know where I put my keys?" And then he sees her, so he like rushes to her. He's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, he gets in the shower, he like holds in his arm, and she just like looks at him but doesn't say anything. And then I didn't really notice, but someone had commented, I saw on Reddit, and you got to be careful on Reddit because people will mark things as spoilers, but the headlines are spoilery, which is kind of ridiculous. But someone had commented that their grout was really bad or something like that in this scene, and I'll get to that in just a couple minutes. So then like Mark seems like standing in the rain, but then the background switches to like the Lumen work area, and he turns and Miss Casey's there. And she's like, oh, I'm here to observe Heli R. So it's back from like season 1. And he's like, oh, no one told me. And Miss Casey, she's like, Miss Cobell's orders. I'm to watch her for signs of sadness and verbally encourage her to forego further suicidal attempts. And then the room like kind of flickers and then the room wavers. And then darkness kind of, there's like almost like wires or something like that. They turn into wires. And we hover along. And then like someone's like tapping their foot, then we see Mark from the computer, like from the computer POV with like Gemma standing next to him. So it's almost like we go through his screen and someone's like watching him through his computer. And then it kind of speeds up and we see like the numbers on his screen. Then there's like Mark, and then the camera kind of pans out to this like dark room of people watching, and this deep voice. I don't know if it was what's his name? Mr. Drummond? I couldn't tell. Are the severance barriers holding? And then this other voice is like, yes, the technology is working. So there's these two guys like standing next to like one of the watchers, I guess. So again, I think the one dude is Mr. Drummond. So then who I think is Mr. Drummond is like, you'll like her. The other guy's like, she's easy to like. She's fond of me too, of course. So we see like a white hallway like on a guy's screen and they're standing by. And he's like, didn't she try and break your fingers? So then we see like the nurse and Gemma walking down the hall on the screen, and then Gemma pushes a button by a door and enters. So it switches to Gemma walking into like a doctor's office with Mark, so another flashback. They're sitting in the waiting room. Gemma like stares at this little girl on the floor. So obviously, they're trying to get pregnant or something like that. So Mark's like, it's the next step for a lot of people. He's like, I love you. And she's like, I love you too. She's like, I'm sorry. And he like shakes his head. He's like no, don't be. And then she fills out like a new patient intake form, but we only see her write her first name. It's like, why is her last name Casey? No, probably not. But it's like, I don't know if they just, because like when she introduced herself, she just said Gemma. And then when she filled out this form, we don't see her write the last name. So I don't know if they're purposely not showing that. So yeah, I don't know. So then the room flickers and changes into like a more sterile kind of like Lumen room. And it's weird because like almost like this, the waiting room that they're at is like almost the same size of the room that she's staying at Lumen. So she's wearing this kind of like jumpsuit and her hair's up, and the camera kind of like it's almost like stutters around the room, like it's moving. It's like very like jagged, whatever. So then we travel the hall. We get a glimpse of like there's like a flash. There's a lot of flashes, and I actually had to like try to record it and like. Yeah, basically what I did is, because it's more precise, I would record it on my phone, just the one scene, so I can like pause it and see what happens. But there's like a image of Mark when he was working like on that tree sculpture, whatever, in the other break room. Then we go down the hall to like the elevator with the red light, it's actually pointing going up, because this is the testing floor, so this is the other end of that light that Irving was painting. And then there's like just more weird images and stuff. Then it stops Mark getting dressed. Gemma calls to him, asks if he's ready, and she says it's time. And she hands him a syringe, like in this package, and he like opens it. And she's like, third time's the charm. And she's a little nervous, and he's like, yeah, well, it's a final step, and there's a kid out there just waiting for us. We just got to reach out and grab her, right? And she's like, well, what if this doesn't work? And he's like, turn around and bend over, and then poke. And she's like, ow. So I don't know if they're like, if it's like fertility stuff, or I don't know about that stuff. There's a close up of her eyes, which brings her back to her, like, then it shifts to like her eyes at Lumen. So it was a pretty cool transition, whatever the way they keep doing all this stuff. And she's like in a regular chair. I think there's a doctor now sitting in front of her, and the camera's like in front of her, asks like how she's feeling, and someone's watching from the other room. They switch the camera view to there's like this round thing next to her, and I'm assuming it's like an X-ray machine, because it switches to her X-ray side view, and you can see there's a severed chip in her head. So it's like, okay, so this is Miss Casey Gemma now. She's obviously been severed, and then she answers, she's like, my mouth hurts. And then they ask like, which room caused your mouth to hurt? And she's like, the first one. So they're like, Wellington, how many rooms did you visit today? She's like, 6. And she's like, the Billings room, the Lucknow room, St. Pierre, Cairns, Zurich, and she's like, the Wellington room. She's like, the Wellington room. Excellent. And what happened in the rooms? You remember nothing? And she shakes her head. She's like, nothing. So like, how do you feel in the hall? Did you exit any of the rooms feeling despair, fervor, gaiety? And she's like, there's only one room I haven't been to yet. And today it had a name on it. And the doctor's like, Cold Harbor. She's like, so what happens once I've been in all the rooms? And they're like, you'll see the world again, and the world will see you. And she's like, so I'll see Mark? And they answer kind of carefully. They say, Mark will benefit from the world you're siring. Kier will take away all his pain, just as Kier has taken away yours. So like, what the heck does that mean? What are they doing? And she's like, can you please just talk like a normal person? And the doctor's like, good night, Gemma. Dream sweet. And he gets up and leaves. So like, what does that mean? So then we see Gemma sitting in a room, and Mark calls up, the coffee's ready, and she closes the door. So it's like, what's that about? Then in the present, Mark is still out on the couch. Devin's sleeping too. It's the next day. She gets up and she sees Assel next to Mark with like an IV drip, and she asks if he's okay. Assel said that he's stable. You know, it was an isolated event. You know, he's journeying now. So Devin's like, oh, will he wake up? And she's like, when he's ready to. And Devin's like, great. You really think this is going to work? And Assel's like, there's no other choice. And then Devin's like, there's an innie cabin. And Assel's like, come again? Devin's like, it's a cottage where severed people become their innies. And there was this woman. And then Assel's like, the Mona birthing retreat. And then Devin's like, well, so maybe if we go to the cabin, we could talk to his innie and he could. Assel's like, they're two completely different things. And they're like, you know, holding up some equipment. She's like, this is how you get Gemma out. And Devin's like, really, this? Because this looks like how you kill my brother. And Assel's like kind of getting frustrated. She's like, you two are definitely related. And then Devin looks at Mark. She's like, I could call her. And Assel's like, who? Devin's like, Harmony Cobell. And Assel's like, what? Why would you do that? She runs the Sever to Floor. And Devin's like, not anymore, she doesn't. She might know how to get in the cabin. And fudge, she might know how to get to Gemma. And then she like scrolls through her phone like contacts. It's like, Assel's like, she's Lumen through and through. She was raised by them. She's a soldier. And Devin's like, it's a risk, I get that. And Assel's like, a risk? And Devin's like, yeah. Assel's like, she will turn you over to them, both of us. Everything I've done to fight, gone. We resume the treatment as soon as he wakes up. And Devin's like, okay, I have custody of his brain now. You don't. I'm calling her. And she's like, you know, about to dial. And then Assel's like, well then, I can't be part of this. And Devin's like, what? Assel's like, if you do that, if you make that choice. And Devin's like, no, seriously, what are you doing? And she's like, good luck. And she's like, you can't leave him like this. She's like, no. She's like, I can't do this without you. She's like, are you kidding? You're leaving now? And I was like, this isn't my choice. It's yours. And Devin's like, no, I need you to stay. I don't know what to do with this. What do I do if he wakes up? And Assel's like, do not call that woman. And she's like, oh my God. And Assel's gone. So Devin's thumb kind of hovers over the call button. And then there's kind of like a muffle from Mark. And she goes to him. She's like, what are you trying to say? And he whispers, Chick. And then Chikai Bardo, which is the name of the episode. So it's in the flashback. So at first I was like, is this a flashback from the self-defense cards that they found, that the one that Dylan took and he got in trouble? But no, it's not. It's actually Gemma and Mark have the cards. And Mark says, it looks like two guys fighting. And she's like, no, it's the same guy fighting himself, defeating his own psyche. And, you know, ego, death. And Mark's like, how do you know it's the same guy? And she's like, well, the hair is the same. And he's like, oh. And he's like, that thing came in the mail? She's like, yeah, it's one of those things where you have to draw a duck or a rabbit or whatever. She's like, I think I got onto the mailing list at the clinic. And Mark's like, why are you wasting your time with this? And then she looks at him, she's like, why are you being an a-hole? He's like, I'm not. So she's like at a table, sort of like in a dining area. You know, he looked there, but then he's like in the kitchen, like making a sandwich or something like that. He's like, I'm not. I don't know. It seems kind of weird. And Gemma's like, I'm enjoying this, or was, until you ruined it. And Mark's like, I think you might be overreacting a little bit, Gemma. And she's like, don't do that. And he's like, do what? And she's like, tell me how I'm feeling. He's like, I have no idea how you're feeling. And she says, like poop, beat the poop. And he's like, so let's stop. And I'm assuming they're talking about like trying to have a kid. And then so he's like, well, let's just stop then. And he like turns, back to like his sandwich or whatever. And, she's just like staring at him like, are you serious? So then we see like a close-up of like plants or something like that. And it's like, are they black or is it just a day turning to night? Like what's going on? Then there's like kind of like a flash of light. We see Gemma sleeping, but it was like, where is she sleeping at? It's not real super clear. Then back at Lumen, she's in her room. We see several like Lumen brand items like hand soap, hand sanitizer, deodorant. I think they're like little floss sticks or something like that. She's like brushing her teeth, like major, all this foam. Oh, that's the other thing I forgot to mention. So with the dental equipment, with the dentist and all that, what the heck is Lumen doing? Because when they were in that one room and there's like all the pictures of the teeth when they went on that tour or whatever. So what's up with all the close-up of the teeth? And then there's a dentist there, and why is she at the dentist for 2 hours? She makes her bed kind of like really perfectly. She lays out some items like at the end, and I don't know if it's like a washcloth or whatever is like stuff. She goes to her closet. What's the outfit selected for today? It's this blue suit jacket, and then her hair is like different this time. So it's short, it's up. It's almost, I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like roundish, but almost maybe like ovalish, kind of sticking up at the end. So it's definitely done up. And then she goes through a door, but then it's like another severing thing. And then she's suddenly on a plane. It's like, wait, what? There's a plane with like a lot of turbulence. And, she actually catches her drink that's on a tray, like sliding. And this like server trolley rolls by and the flight attendant's like chasing it. And she's like screaming. And he sort of like almost like dives for the trolley thing, the tray thing. And he's like, it's okay. This is perfectly normal. He's like, let's get you set up with a meal. He's like, bon appetit. He sets a tray down of food. And I couldn't even tell what it was. And he's like, can I get you anything else? And then he like, the turbulence like slams him on the ceiling and he falls. And then Gemma's back in her, I don't know what that was about. Did she actually go on a plane? At first I was like, is this a simulated thing? I don't know. So Gemma's back in her room. She's being watched on the TV. And she's doing this like yoga pose, which looks like the quote-unquote fighting move on the card. So then the watcher hits a button and it changes to the Cold Harbor data. And the guy's like, he's stuck at 96%. So then it switches to the MDR room and the one guy's like, the nosebleed set us back. When he's done, you're gonna have to say goodbye to her. And then she like opens this drawer. There's like these little Lumen, almost like tear-shaped packs. And it's like flaky dinner roll, apple blossom, rendered marrow, candied carrots. She drops a few like in water, so I don't know if they're food packets that she's going to boil or something like that. Then the guy replies, so he says, when he's done, you're going to have to say goodbye to her. And he's like, I'm aware. And then the guy's like, for cure. And then the food, it seems like the food, it doesn't expand or anything. It kind of pretty much keeps the same shape, whatever. But maybe kind of expand a little more. And then she's drinking water, and there's like something in a glass. I couldn't tell what it was. And she's still being watched. Then the guy replies, for cure. And the guy's like, why are you wearing that stupid sweater? And it's kind of like this like winter, like holiday sweater thing, like almost like red and white. And the guy just like walks out of the monitor room. In her room, I think, Gemma puts on like a wedding ring. Actually, she must be in a different room. And she's sitting in front of a mirror, kind of like she's not in her room. She's saying, dear Mr. Tisdale, or she's like writing, I cannot thank you enough for the thoughtful Christmas gift you sent my husband and I this year. So then we see her, it's like, so while she's saying that, she exits her room, the nurse is there, she's wearing this red robe. So she walks through like a doorway and she gets severed. We see like this old timey radio. And she's like, we have never owned an electric grouter. So that's why I mentioned the shower thing, because there's a grouter. And she's like, and we look forward to the many happy memories it will provide. So she's writing a thank you card, and her writing is really bad. It's almost like childish. She's like, it's like it's painful for her to write. So the room is like very 50s style. There's like a big Christmas tree. There's like a big window, but you can't fully see what's outside. There's like this old style TV, and that dude wearing the sweater, he's sitting in a chair. And it's like, wait, is he posing as her husband? It's like, what does that mean? Because, she had a wedding ring on. And, so her hand starts hurting when she's writing. And then the dude's like, come on now, sweetheart. It's the last one. So he calls her sweetheart. She goes back to like her jagged writing. It's like, nothing says Christmas like grouting. And the dude's like, it's actually a degrouter, but close enough. And she just like looks at him. She's like, how much longer do I have to do this? He's like, I told you, you're done. But Christmas has a funny way of coming back around each year. So she's kind of glaring at him. And then she folds the envelope shut or whatever. She's like, it's always Christmas. And then the dude's like, let's go. So she gets up, like holding her hand. And he's like, I love you. And she just kind of like a little tiny scoff and tries walking. And then he sort of like stops her. I said, I love you. And there's like maybe like a tiny hint of sarcasm. She's like, I love you too. So wait, where are they going? What's happening? And this was another spoiler I saw on Reddit. I didn't read what people wrote, but I'm assuming it's about this. Someone's like, did Gemma get raped? Because if she's, is she severed into thinking that this guy is actually her husband? Because she's writing this letters, and it's like, what is the point of this room? She goes into one severed room, and it's like, due to different room, why is she going to 6 rooms in one day? Is each room giving her like a different severed innie personality? Why is she going into a dentist room? Is it a way to train dentists so you have a patient, you don't have to worry about it, and they don't feel it? And then here, she's like in this room, she's married here. It's like, I don't understand. But she exits the room, and it's like, how long after was this? Is this like right when she got up? Is this the next day? Is it an hour later, 2 hours, 2 minutes? There's like this weird flicker of her like kind of crouched against the wall. You kind of see it. And she's like walking with the nurse, and her hand still hurts. So it's like, right after that. Then we see this like reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I think it's playing old-timey music. It's because then we see something else playing music. We see a record player later. The scenes keep switching. So Gemma sits. There's a shot of her crouching, which is kind of like with that flicker we got. Mark's like trying to build the crib, and she comes downstairs, and there's a close-up shot of the reels, and you see like Lumen is on the label. So Lumen does these music reels or whatever. Mark's like getting frustrated. He ends up like kind of tossing the pieces on the floor. And then we see, so it's like all these different scenes cut together, because then they're both in the kitchen, not saying a word. Then there's a shot of a record player playing the music. So then it's like, wait, so was the reel-to-reel at Lumen? Then it's like Christmas time. They're both on a couch, kind of like cuddling in each other's arms. And then it flickers between like different Gemmas. So then back to Lumen Gemma, the elevator dings and someone like walks down the hall. So I think it's a nurse. So they're like, because someone's all in white, but it's like so far off you can't really see. Then Lumen Gemma is like toying with a piece of cake. Her TV flickers on, and then there's like black and white shot of the dentist. So she beeps him in. He's like, hello, Gemma. And she's like, Dr. Maurer. He's like, how are you feeling? And she's like, my hand hurts. And he's like, and what room caused your hand to hurt? And she's like, Allentown. And every time I think of Allentown, I think of Billy Joel song. So she kind of like thinks about something, and then she turns to him. She's like, I want to go home. And he like looks at her, and he like turns the music off on the reel-to-reel. And then he's like, your husband remarried last year, and he has a daughter now. And she kind of like looks at him, and she's like, I don't believe you. So Dr. Maurer's like, you've been gone a long time, Gemma. He's moved on. Maybe you've moved on too. In one of the rooms. What do you think? Do you feel yourself gravitating towards one room or another? Maybe you felt things behind those doors you never felt with Mark. Maybe I've seen it. And he takes this book off a shelf. It's like the death of Ivan Ilyich, which is what she was reading before. So there must be something about that. Then he's like, let me guess. He dies at the end. And he's kind of being sassy or rude or whatever, but she hits him in the back of the head with a chair. So he's out. She reaches, grabs his ID scan card. She exits, but then the hallways are like pitch dark, so it must be like nighttime. And it's almost like the things like where you walk and then the light that section lights up for just like a split second and turns off. So she sees the elevator, but then someone's coming because the lights are turning on. So she goes on this different direction. And it's like, is that the nurse walking? So Gemma kind of ducked against a wall, and she's like, so the light would turn off where she was. So she managed to hide. She moves, but then the nurse must have either heard her or turned around and saw her and calls out, like, Gemma. They're both running. She heads towards the elevator. She gets the elevator open, and the nurse is like, Gemma, stop, Gemma. The elevator goes up, but then she gets severed again. So now this elevator takes her into being Miss Casey. So there's another flashback. Mark is like typing, and she enters a room, and he's like, hey, and she's like, you sure you don't want to come? He's like, it's charades, I was gonna say, charades. And she's like, that's gonna be like 20 minutes of it? He's like, yeah, but And she's like, or I could stay. He's like, no, you should probably go. I mean, this thing has got to be in tonight anyways, whatever he's working on. And she's like, okay, did you get the Denali thing I sent? He's like, no, I'll look at it. I'll check it out. And she's like, all right, well, I'll be back at like 10 o'clock. And he's like, okay. And she's like, I love you. And she's like, he's like, oh no, I love you too. And it's like, I'm sorry. So it's weird because that's what that dude said, the sweater dude said to her. So he's like, I'm sorry. She's like, bye. He's like, see ya. So is this the last time he ever sees her? Elevator opens. There's a dark hallway. She steps out. She starts walking. Then there's a door at the other end of the hallway. Friggin' Mr. Milchick opens the door. And he's wearing his leather jacket. So did he rush over? And he's like, Miss Casey. And she's like, Mr. Milchick. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, what's happening? He's like, nothing. Your Audi came in for a public art exhibition and found herself in the wrong elevator. And she's like, oh, how long have I been? And he's like, if you wouldn't mind turning around and heading back, it would be greatly appreciated. And she's like, but he's like, on you go. So he just keeps like cutting her off. So she turns and walks, and then she turns and she's like, where's? And he's like, thank you, Miss Casey. So she gets back in the elevator and goes back down. It's like, you're so close here. And Milchick, he's like standing here. So it goes down. Milchick goes through the door and closes it. So then this flashback, Mark is still working at his desk, and there's like a car pulls in the driveway, lights like pull in. Miss Casey turns back to Gemma in the elevator. She severs back, and a nurse is waiting outside the elevator. Mark walked in the flashback. Mark walks towards the door. He sees two officers on the other side of the window, and you could see one takes off his hat, and he's kind of staring at him because he knows this can't be good. Gemma stands in the elevator. Mark stands by the door, and then the images almost overlay, kind of like they're staring at each other, like across time or whatever. Gemma's fighting the tears. She slides down to the floor, and she's like, Mark. The nurse tells her, come on. And she's escorted out. Mark, shrinks into the shadows. But then in the present, so Mark opens his eyes. It's blurry. Devin's sitting there. She's like, hey. He kind of looks around confused. And she's like, easy. And she's like, oh, Mark, where did you go? Which is what they said, the doctor said to Gemma. Then we see Gemma in a library. Then there's a close-up of her eyes. And it's sad music playing. So again, that's the end of the episode. So it was crazy, and I just think it's cool. So it was Jessica Lee Gagnier or something like that is her name. So there's this cinematographer, and they talk about it at the end. Just her vision or whatever, just to see things and just give us this story of Gemma, which is just weird. So it definitely has a different feel to it, and it was pretty cool, but it's just sad and tragic. It's what the heck are they doing to her? Why is she locked up? And it's so creepy. How are they using her? What are they doing to her? What are they making her do? It's why is her jaw hurt? Are they yanking teeth out or putting them back in? I don't know. So you can watch the next episode now or wait till next week. Okay, then Prime Target. It's season 1, episode 7, Prime Finder. As I record this, the final episode is out. So we're going to talk about it next week, or I'm going to talk about it next week. But yeah, so it's all out there. Only 8 episodes. So this episode 7, starts off in Cambridge, England. It's night. There's like this shadowy figure walking. He's like, is that Edward? Then he's at the bar. So Adam, the bartender, sees him. They go down in the basement to talk. Edward says that he wanted to contact him and tell him what was happening, but it's all been too much. And Adam's like, it's all right. He's like, I was just coping with the rejection. And Edward's like, it wasn't rejection. He's like, it wasn't. Adam hugs him and asks, what can he do to help? And Edward asks, he's like, can I stay there, in the basement of the pub? He's like, stay here. And Edward's like, I have nowhere else to go. He's like, I have work to do. And Adam's like, work? He's like, what's going on? He's like, Adam, don't ask me to say more. And he's like, that's what this is all about. And Adam's like, your work? And Edward's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, of course. He's like, that head of yours is going to get you into trouble someday. He's like, I'll be down in a bit, okay? And at this point, it's like, I don't, just something seems, I don't trust Adam, but whatever. I feel like, I'm just being overly skeptical or whatever. In London, England, Jane goes up an elevator. Taylor's there on this floor and she gets off. And she's like, it's a great new office you got. And she's like, who's paying the bill? So Jane's like, these are Axiorn's offices. They bankroll our operation. Their interests and ours intersect. And Taylor's like, they do, huh? Well, they killed Olsen, and they would have killed me too, and Ed for that matter as well. And Jane's like, that wasn't me. Which is like a bunch of bull, because she put the hit out, she agreed to the hit on Edward. But she's like, that was her. So Taylor's like, great. So here's me thinking you were in charge. And Jane's like, another illusion shattered. Then Jane asks, what does she need? Change of clothes, shower, coffee. And Taylor's like, no, what I need, Jane, is for someone to explain to me what happened to the woman that practically raised me. I trusted you. And then Jane, she's like, when you're ready, we'll talk more. And she walks away. And then this other goon agent, to her, Jane's like, get her a coffee and something to eat and make sure the door is locked at all times. So Edward sits thinking, and then he sees like a fire smoke detector. And so he gets up and looks at it, hears someone coming, so he just pulls it off and he sticks it in his back pocket, and it's Adam. Edward asks again if he can stay there, and Adam's like, sorry. He's like, I don't think my boss will what do you say, wear that or hear that? He says something it was kind of weird. I thought it was weird. Edward says it's for a few nights, so he can finish this. Adam's like, well, my auntie has a flat in East London. She never uses it, and it's wee small. And Edward says, he's like, well, I don't know what to say. And Adam's like, thank you would be fine. He's like, I can drive you. He's like, I'm owed a couple days here, and you can do your work, and I'll look after you. And so he goes back up since it's almost closing time. Edward goes back to his notes. He's looking at the rubbing that he stole, this priceless artifact from this, 16th century. He just steals it. He tries mapping it out. Looks at his watch. It's late, so I guess he's been working for a while. So he goes up, and here it comes. Adam's on the phone with someone, and he's like, yeah, he's downstairs. And he's like, I don't know, a few hours ago, maybe? And he's like, yeah, so Edward's just walking up to him. He's like, yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm going to drive him myself later, yeah. So Edward, then he's just like, oh, I thought you'd forgotten about me. He doesn't say anything, just and I couldn't really tell. It's is he aware? Does he realize that this is a weird conversation? Who is Adam talking to about Edward like that? And why does it sound so suspicious? Or is he just so enamored with him that he's not hearing that? But he's supposed to be a genius, right? He's like, I thought you'd forgotten about me. But Adam puts his phone away and he smiles. He's like, no chance. He's like, I'm nearly finished here. So then Edward's like, who are you talking to? And then he's like, that was my Auntie Laura there. So she says that you can have her flat to yourself for the rest of the week, and maybe even the next week as well if you want. And he's like, does that give you enough time for your Nobel Prize? And Edward's like, maybe. Then he kind of notices a look on Edward's face. He's like, what? And Edward's like, what I'm working on close. So I don't think he suspects anything. And Adam's like, never doubted you. I actually really missed you. And Edward's like, well, I missed you too. So Adam's like, so what do you think? What should you say? What should I say to my Auntie Laura? She's like, or I could drop you off at your dad's. And he's like, no. He's like, London would be great.
So again, does Edward trust him? It's like, I haven't trusted him. So then in London, Edward wakes up in a car. Adam's like, oh, we're nearly there. And he's like, oh, I remember this amazing cafe nearby. And Edward's like, where are we? Adam's like, I told you we're almost there. So they get to this big skyscraper. Like, and Edward's like, your auntie lives here? It's a nice place. And then here it comes. Adam's like, Ed, listen, we better talk. Edward tries to open a door, but it's locked. He's like, what's going on, Adam? And Adam's like, listen, just do what they say. Edward lets out a big, and he's like trying to open the door. He's like, let me out. And Adam's like, just finish your work. He's like, open the door. And Adam's like, just finish the theorem. He's like, work it out, okay? He's like, I swear, Ed, it'll be fine. And Edward's like, don't do this. And Adam's like, you do know that it was real though, right? Okay, it was real. And Edward's like, this whole time you were with me, you knew? So that's just kind of skeezy that they set him up to go after Edward to keep tabs on him. And he's just been working. But he claims that he did, it was real. So some man in a suit like approach his door, and Edward's like, oh God, he's like, they're gonna kill me. He's like, no, they're gonna kill me, Adam. And Adam's like, no, you're far too important to kill. It's like, me on the other hand. But he unlocks Edward's door, and then Edward's like, you're nothing, zero. So they yank Edward out of the car. They slam him against it. He's like, get off me, get off me. They inject him in the neck with something, and he's out. So then we see Andrea. She enters, I forget his name. This is James, Stephen Ray, the professor. She goes to his office. He's like, oh, such sad news about Sharon. He gives her a hug. She says that she hasn't been able to sleep since she got back, all this carnage, and, where did it all begin? And, it's like, Bait al-Hikmah? And she's like, do you know how much I've invested in searching for it with such high hopes? She's like, but now, honestly, I wish I'd never heard of it. And James is like, stop. He's like, that way madness lies. You're a historian. Your task, as far as I can make out, is to cast light upon whichever mysteries remain to us, to help us understand. And she's like, but while I was out there, it seems the chamber didn't just appear by accident. Someone was looking for it and blasted their way in. And James is like, how do they know where to look? And she just doesn't have an answer. She has no idea. Edward wakes up. He's groggy. There's like pulsing lights. There's like projector shining. He tries getting up, and he was on a cot, so he kind of slips off and lands on his bottom. He looks like the floating dust particle in the lights. He kind of sees patterns and starts like mapping stuff out. Then the lights go on. It's like this plain white room. He enters. Edward tries backing away, but he falls. He stumbles down. Andrew tells him that he's going to want to take it slowly since he's been sedated. He offers him a bottle of water. This other dude sets on a tray of food. Andrew says that the nausea should pass soon. He tells him that they have breakfast if he'd like. Anything he wants, just ask the guy's name. I think it was Bobby. And then he tells someone on the phone, he's awake. And then he's like, Adam? And Andrew's like, yeah, lovely guy, right? He was assigned to you just to keep an eye on you and your work. But I guess he got in a little over his head. And Edward's like, what am I doing here? And Andrew's like, well, we thought that it would be best to bring you in under adult supervision. You're precious to us, Ed. And as you can see, we got everything you need. There's a desk in the room, where they put the tray down. And there's his notebook, the rubbing that he stole. And he's like, there's something else there. We find out what it is. So, and it's anything you need. Bobby comes in with this case. He's like, I believe you've been looking for this. And Edward's like, Safia Zamil's thesis? You want me to build it for you, the prime finder? And Adam's like, oh, come on. It's like, who are you kidding? You must be pissing your PhD pants right now. It's like, this is your dream, Ed. This is what you were born to do. And he sits next to him. He's like, we're basically the good guys. But it's weird he says we're basically the good guys. Not we are the good guys. We're basically the good guys. And Edward's like, seems like it. And I don't know if he's being sarcastic or not. Then Andrew's like, a key that can break any digital lock used to be a pipe dream. He's like, then they thought maybe quantum might do it, but quantum it's a decade away, right?
He's like, this is a fast lane, but you don't care about that, do you? You just want to know. It's like, you're a purist, right? He's like, hey, I respect that. Okay, so here's the deal. You take as long as you need. You want to sleep? We'll dim the lights. And, there's also like a big one-way mirror, like in the room, on like one wall. He's like, you want food? You want TV? You want a string quartet playing? Just say the word. He's like, Ed, just finish what you started, because I can promise you one thing. You'll never get the chance again. And he walks out. So it's like, is that a threat that you'll never get the chance again? I don't know. Andrew's searching like drawers in her office. She pulls out a paper. It's like, the enlightenment of the Caliph Harun al-Rashid and the lost knowledge of Bay al-Hikmah, House of Wisdom. So it was her paper for her PhD that she wrote back in 1994. She flips through some of the pages, and one has like a map of like a predicted location. We see Taylor. She's sitting in a chair. She looks like she's bored. Edward's sitting on his cot. He kind of like glances over at Sophia's thesis. He finally gets up. Taylor is like doing push-ups, but it turns out Edward didn't. I thought he was going to start working. He didn't. So he gets up, but then he's just like standing by his chair, and then he's like looking at the keypad by the door. There's more food that's brought in, and then he's sitting on the floor. He like looks over at the desk, because that's where Sophia's thesis is. Later, he's looking at the mirror. Then they dim the lights, and he just lies down. So he's been there like almost a day, and he hasn't done anything. Taylor's like in this like barren. It's like an empty office floor, basically. There is like a chair, sofa there, whatever. But there's like not much else in there. So she just looks over the city. Edward stares at the stuff on the desk. So he's probably struggling, trying to resist. Every ounce of whatever his curiosity wants to go there and look at it, but he also doesn't want to give in to these people. Taylor, somehow I don't know, they brought her a ball, but she's just like bouncing it. Edward goes by the chair. He like forces himself back, and then he's like stares up at the camera in the corner of the room. Then he eats something. Taylor's sitting, the lights go off, so I guess like another day has passed. Then we see Edward's laying on a cot. He pulls a blanket up. Andrew's sitting on the other side of the mirror. He's like watching like a creep, because that's all he is. Then the lights go up. It's morning, or I think, or are they like forcing him up? More food is brought in. He sits up. He stares at the thesis. Andrew's like watching, like, because Edward's leg is just like fidgeting. He's just like tapping his leg. He finally gives in. He opens it up. He flips through until he finds the page that he wants. He picks up a marker, like a dry erase marker, and starts writing on the walls, because there's like just plain white walls all around. And he's got like he's happy, like, because this is what he wants. Taylor wakes up to find like a croissant next to her. Jane's there looking out the window. And she's like, so, you going to let me explain? And Taylor's like, you going to tell me the truth? So Jane's like, the NSA answers to congressional oversight. Axion, however, is a private firm. It operates without restrictions, means they can do things we can't. And Taylor's like fun Kepler? She's like, yes. So Taylor's like, so Axion funded Safia Zamil and Robert Melinder? And Jane's like, yes. And Taylor's like, and then killed them to put a stop to their work after they refused to move on. It's like, what about Edward? And she's like, safe and sound. Matter of fact, he's here. Look, Taylor, I don't have to tell you what happens if our digital systems are breached. If someone built a key that could pick every digital lock in the world, chaos on a global scale. 30 years we've been doing this, trying to suppress the idea, trying to keep anyone from making it real. And now there are others who want the key. And Taylor's like, who? And she's like, not a clue. That's what we're afraid of. Taylor's like, so you're creating it? And Jane's like, yes. And Taylor's like, and what is Edward, your genius in residence? So Jane's like, he is under our protection, yes. And Taylor's like, yeah, BS. And Jane's like, he needs your help, Taylor, and so do I. So Edward's still working, just like writing. Andrew's watching, like almost all the walls are covered. And then he's like, looks, it's like, wait, is he stuck? He glances at the mirror. And he just yells out, he's like, what happens to me if I can't finish? Andrew says, like over to like intercom, a crushing and permanent sense of personal failure, I expect. And he's like, right. He's like, you hit a wall? And Edward's like, pfft. He's like, why, you got any ideas? And then Andrew's like, carry to one. That was a good one. So at a Cambridge library, Andrea looks into like the digital archive. She looks at a book about the one place. She looks who checked it out. So Akram's name is there. And he checked it out on the 14th of January, 2024, and returned it on the 25th of January. So she tries calling a number, but it's no longer in service. She calls another number and gets a voicemail. So she called Taylor. She leaves a message for Taylor. And she's like, please call me, it's important. Jane comes to see Taylor because she has to talk to her. So Taylor's like, I've been thinking a lot about what we're really doing here. Secrecy. Is it a good thing or, a bad thing? And Jane's like, you tell me. Taylor's like, I had a secret and then you shut up. And Jane's like, and I took care of it. And you got your life back. So imagine a world where that's not possible, where no one can hide anything, ever. And what about security? And Taylor's like, privacy, yeah. And then she's like, so Edward builds this Prime Finder for you. What happens next? What are you going to do with it? And Jane's like, nothing. And she's like, don't do that eye roll thing. I'm serious. Having it is not the same as using it. So if we have capability, and Taylor's like, you can stay ahead. And Jane's like, yeah. We can protect everyone. Which I don't understand it. If they build it, that means no one else can build it? Because if they build it, couldn't anyone just build it? I don't understand the thinking here. So she's like, we can protect everyone. We're talking about our survival. You want to get a closer look? Come on. So they go to Edward's level. Andrew sees him like walking down the hall in a camera. So they go into like the pre-room, whatever. Jane introduces Taylor to Andrew Carter, Deputy Director of Surveillance Operations at the NSA. He extends his hand. She doesn't shake it. She's like, with a side hustle at Axiorn? And he's like, our natural allies. Taylor's like, most of their clients are banks, right? So I bet the money's not bad. And he's like, this is very touching. You two, especially after all the ways you both betrayed each other, right? Speaking of sweet reunions, have you seen the progress your friend has made? So she sees like Edward sleeping on a cot and all the writing. And she's like, is he okay? And Jane's like, so far. Andrew's like, we've given him all the pieces of the puzzle. He's hit a small roadblock, but help is on the way. Taylor's like, and what happens then? You have to input the math into a compiler turned into code. And they just like look at her and she's like, right, that's why I'm here. Jane's like, we'd like to keep the circle as tight as possible, just for now. And Andrew's like, plus you get to be part of history. And Taylor's like, am I supposed to thank you for that? And Jane's like, Taylor? And she's like, well, what happens when it's finished? And Jane's like I said, we keep it safe. And Andrew's like, it's a gun that's never fired, just sits on our desk. And Jane's like, we don't want to have to use it ever. We just need the capability to keep it out of the hands of our enemies. Okay, being first is essential. You know that. Taylor's like, okay, I'll do it. But when he finishes, you have to let him go. And Jane's like, sure, yeah, absolutely. And Taylor's like, swear it. And she's like, I swear, okay? And then Taylor looks at Andrew. She's like, what about the slug? And Jane's like, T. And she's like, what? He gives me a sluggy vibe. And Andrew's like, he kind of smirks at that. He's like, hey, we won't hurt him, I promise. Which I do not believe them. So Jane grabs Taylor's phone and like holds it out. She's like, so are we good? And Taylor's like, we're good. So Andrea goes to the big dining hall at Cambridge. She walks with a purpose. She's determined. She goes up to like the master's table, sits next to Stephen Ray, to James. And he's like, what's the matter? And she's like, Bait al Hikmah. She's like, I'm the one researcher who came closest to identifying the location. Anyone looking for it would need to use my work to find it. And the only place to find my work is here. Now, I've been looking at the library records. 6 requests when it was first published. Then hardly any interest until this January. And it's Akram. And she's like, it was him, James. And I mean, it makes perfect sense. He's been running the dig since day one. This proves it. My work led him to the site and he blew up a street. She's like, I mean, people died. And James like, this is bad. Okay. She's like, let me think about this. We need to be sure. I need to speak to my contacts. It's like, we can talk about this later. And Andrea, this could look very bad for all of us. You, me, college, all our reputations. So keep it to ourselves just for now. Edward's sitting in a chair in the room. He's just staring at the walls. The door opens and he's like, just stick it in the corner. And then I keep hearing the same music, the same phrase, repeating over and over. Da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. It's like, I think it's Mozart. So it's a professor. So Edward's like, Jesus, professor, you up. And he turns to the mirror, he's like, what is this? And, but it's like the professor, it's like one of his shirt tails is like untucked. And it's like, so he just grabbed him, brought him here. So Edward's like yelling, he's like, hey, what is this? He's like, you should have brought him here. And he's like, yeah, I thought a bit of a leap, maybe it would help. He's like, I don't care, not him. Who do you think you are? Edward, I must say, everyone's been so nice. Where am I exactly? And Edward's like, I'm so sorry, this is all my fault. What am I doing? He starts erasing. He's like, I shouldn't be showing them. I shouldn't be showing them this. And the professor's like, wait, let me have a look first. He's like, I can't promise I'll be of much use. My mind is, well, today is a better day, but I'm terribly out of practice. Are these your workings? And he's like, they're Sophia Zamil's. He's like, Sophia, what a tragedy that was. And this, he's another section of the wall. Edward's like, mine. He's like, it's two halves of a theorem written 900 years apart. This side is Musa al-Khwarizm's someone twin prime conjecture. This side, Sophia's work on Sophie Germain. He's like, it's the same algebraic language, just formed entirely differently. And the professor's like, oh, Edward, it's wonderful. You're cracking the oldest puzzle of them all. Why didn't you tell me? And he's like, well, no one believed in it, so I don't. And he's like, perhaps, Edward, but I've always believed in you. And Edward just like takes a deep breath. So then we see that mercenary Bogdan. He's talking on the phone with someone. He says the subject was last seen in Cambridge a few days ago. And the dude on the phone is like, where is Brooks at now? And Bogdan says that he doesn't know. So the dude tells him just keep looking, but he's not to hurt him because they're not animals, not yet. So the guy talking to him, I was like, who is this guy? It's actually Akram. So Bogdan and Akram are working together. So the dude, Akram says, keep looking, he's not to hurt him, not animals. Then he gets another call, so he says he's got to go. It's his daughter. So he tells her that he has one more meeting, and then they can meet up for a nice dinner, and wherever she wants. Professor's talking about when Edward had his first interviews. He mentions how he is a mathematician, unlike others, that he sees targets that are invisible to the rest of them. Edward tells him that he's the best teacher he ever had, and the professor says that all they ever did was look at things together. They're like explorers. And he puts his arm around Edward's shoulder, and Andrew's just like watching them, like just stare at the walls. Then Akram, after talking to Bogdan, he meets with Stephen Ray at a bar. So they talk about the hunt for Brooks. Stephen Ray, James, he says that he thinks that the Yanks have got a hold of him. This is when I realized, I was like, oh wait, this guy's Akram, right? So James says that he's afraid that Andra suspects his hand in the Baghdad business, and Akram's like, what? And James like, so head down before you push off, yes? So he wants to leave, but then James forces him to sit and have another drink. He says that they have more to discuss, like how to extract Brooks from his confinement. So Edward and Professor are discussing similar shapes in the work. Professor writes something, then Edward gets up, and the professor asks like what happened between him and Robert. And Edward says that he said the work was dangerous, and he left him like a warning. He mentions like the image that was sent with the one that couldn't be drawn. He's like, there's so many symmetries that I was like, I don't know, maybe. And he starts writing some more. Then he writes in his notebook. And he tells the professor that he's simplifying it. He writes more on the wall. Then the professor adds something. And he's like, don't you see? He's like, the beginning of a bridge. He's like, I say, we could see land, wouldn't you? Edward just like kind of steps away thinking. He's like, and then what? He's like, Edward, we're changing the history of mathematical thought. He's like, you're changing it. It's what you were put on this earth to do. At the bar, Akram asks, if even if they do find him and he has the maths, then what happens? And Stephen Ray James, he's like, publish. He's like, publish and be damned. And Akram says that would be chaos. Nothing would be safe. And James is like, well, things would settle down in the end. It's like they always do. And then Akram's like, well, what is your end? And James like, my end? He's like, gracious, Akram. He's like, that's mafia talk. And as far as like whatever, it's like, he's like, you know what the root of the word? And Akram's like, no, but I think you're gonna tell me. And James said something that almost sounds like, don't touch my daughter. And then he's like, he's like, that's mafia. He's like, I look forward to having tea with yours in the morning. So the fact that Stephen Ray mentions Akram's daughter, it's like, is he like threatening him? Edward's writing his notebook, then on the board, the professor adds something, then Edward writes. So Edward's like, you think? And the professor's like, of course, it was there all the time. And Edward's like, just waiting to be found. So then the professor's like, this is your moment, and I saw it. I was there. You must publish it. The Brooks theorem. And Edward's like, no, Brooks Osborne. That's the professor. He's like, we did it, professor. And a door opens. This dude lets Taylor in, and she seems to be like kind of like no nonsense. She's just like totally serious. And Edward's like, Taylor? And she's like, hey. And he's like, you're with them? Jeez. He's like, how much have you seen? And she's like, enough. And Edward's like, what does that mean, enough? He's like, you said you hated this stuff. He's like, what did you call it? Forest fire, plague? She's like, it doesn't matter what I said. Everything's changed. And then she's like, Professor, I'm Taylor, a friend of Ed's. And he's like, pfft. She's like, it looks like you guys cracked it, the theorem. The professor's like, so we believe. She points to his notebook. She's like, it's all here, right? And he's like, hey. So she's like, look, at some point, you're going to have to prove that it actually works. And he's like, it works. And then Taylor's like, okay, but you're going to have to be sure about it, and you need a coder. He like shakes his head slightly. He's like, now you're volunteering, are you? For them? And she's like, look, Ed, it's already out there. Everyone is going to want it. Whose hand do you want on a trigger? He's like, I say we finish what we started. And he doesn't say anything. And then he like tries lunging. She's like, don't, hey, because he's trying to grab the notebook. She backs away. The other suit guy like steps forward, and then she walks out. And then Edward, he like hits his cot. He like kind of slaps it, whatever. Taylor tells someone that she'll need a processor, and it's Andrew. He hands her like a keyboard, and she's like, thank you. So she sits. Jane's just standing there with her arms crossed. But then there's like something on Taylor's phone, like on the screen. It's like, is she playing a video, or is her phone like sending something? Is she like, whatever? Edward and the professor sit in the room, and the professor's like, do you think they'll let us go home? It's like, I have a lecture to prepare. And Edward just thinks, he doesn't say anything, but then he's like, there's no lecture, just relax. And the professor's like, I've been thinking I might refer to our little breakthrough. Would you mind, Edward? He just like looks at him and turns away. Taylor enters some stuff, and then she gets to a point, it's like error, undefined variable, and she like curses. So she types some more, and then gets another error. She's like, I hit a speed bump. And Andrew's like, maybe you made a mistake with the code. And she's like, no, it's not me. She's like, it's a fault in the maths. And she checked like the notes again. So Jane's like, maybe he's messing with us. And Andrew's like, maybe you're messing with us. And Jane's like, let's go ask the genius. So she looks at Jane, who nods. Taylor picks up her phone and the notebook. In the room, Taylor's like, something's wrong. It's not working. You need to fix it. And Edward's like, why would I do anything for you? And she's like, because you designed it and it's your responsibility. You need to help us control it. And he stands, but he doesn't say anything. And she's like, Ed, there are people, bad people in the world who want possession of this. You understood that, right? And he's like, and you're the good guys now? He's like, are you? And she's like, Ed? He's like, you want to make the world a better place? And she's like, look, you need to trust me. He's like, I've done way too much of that already. She's like, just one last time, Eduardo. And then he like kind of like, so that's the signal. That was the safe word because he hated it. So it sort of registers. Andrew, it's almost like he glances suspiciously, of course. It's so silly that he would make anything out of that without, there's no other hints. So Andrew just kind of like glances at both of them. Edward's finally like, okay, I'll fix it. So she hands him the notebook and goes up to the mirror. So she's like, Jane, this is for you.
And on the other side, Jane's like, what? Taylor types on her phone. She enters, hits enter. The lights turn off. And like the red kind of like backup emergency lights go on. And Jane yells, no, Taylor. So Taylor, this was like a great part. She couldn't, not that loud, but she hits Edward in the throat. He goes down. He's like, and then the other guy gets, I don't know how he got taken down. If maybe Taylor did something to him. Edward starts like erasing the walls, and Professor's like, no. And the lights are kind of going like black, then the red light, the red is like pulsing. So Taylor's like, we got to go. So Jane's like locked out at the keypad. Edward gets the Professor to move, and Andrew's still on like the floor gasping. And she's like, let's go. And she's like, I've got control of the building security system, but we need to move fast. So they run down the hall. Jane yells at someone to get the hell out of here. Andrew like gets up. He goes to the door in the room. He like opens the door. Andrew hears them. He starts running. Then the Professor, he like trips or something like that, and he's like on the ground. Taylor's like, Andrew's like, we have to go now. So then Andrew's at the door looking at them. And she's like, they're not after him. They're after us. He's like, I'm not leaving him. And she's like, Ed, please. So then Andrew starts hitting the glass window on a door with a fire extinguisher. But it's like there's wire mesh in between there. But he managed to put like a crack in there. The wire mesh would kind of hold it a little longer. I mean, he finally breaks it and just like walks through like no problem. So Edward tells her to leave, like they'll catch up. Andrew makes it through the glass. Again, it's just way too easily. He pulls out his gun and he's like, I can't let you leave, Ed. But Ed was just like, he's like, come on, Professor. And then Andrew's like, where's Taylor? He's like, I want that phone. And she's like hiding in the shadows. And then he's like, no. He's like, move, old man. And the Professor's like, now listen, this boy, he shoots the Professor like in the chest, like off to the side a little bit. And Edward's like, no, Professor. And then Andrew's like, Ed, you come with us now. And then bong, Taylor hits him in the back of the head with a fire extinguisher. Edward's like, Professor, please. Taylor picks up the gun. She's like, Ed, she's like, please, I'm sorry, we got to go. So she grabs him, kind of like drags him away. They run. They leave the Professor's body. There's nothing that can be done. They run outside. They go around a corner. Akram, he's so talking to James. He's like, answer the damn question. What's your end? And Stephen Ray, James, he's like, brave new world. Since you asked, shock the new, daylight the higher ground. And Akram's like, what makes you think you'll prize it all out of him? And James is like, I won't have to prize it out of him. He'll come back here without the slightest murmur. Why? Because he has nowhere else to go. Edward like stops running and kind of like leans against the wall, still kind of like catching his breath. And he's just like kind of processing everything that happened. That is the end of episode 7. So the code is done. Are they going to put it together? Are they going to use it? There's only one episode left. And I'm assuming this is like a one season. I mean, they obviously, I'm sure they could find ways to continue it, but I don't think it's continuing. So that's prime target. All right, Cobra Kai, season 6, episode 14, Strike Last. So this, it almost feels like all of a sudden it's like boom, boom, boom. It's like we're getting close to the end. It's like going so quickly. I was like, okay, we're gonna get the woman's final fight. Is that gonna be the whole episode? But so no, we're gonna get the women's and the men's. Daniel and Johnny are driving in the yellow convertible. They're like downtown, and then Johnny's like, "Oh, we missed the turn," and Daniel's like, "Oh, we're not going to Miyagi-Do." So they end up going to Johnny's like old Cobra Kai location at the strip mall. He's like, I talked to Daniel's like, I talked to Zarkarian, whatever the landlord dude. I talked him down to a reasonable rate in your name. And Johnny's like, you did? Why? And Danny's like, because you're Cobra Kai again. And what better way to kick things off than by training Miguel and Tori for their final matches right back where it all began. And, there's like a Cobra Kai logo on the floor. And there's like a little bit of spray painting. So like the strike first or what, stuff is still on there. And then Danny's like, the first time I saw that logo here, it brought up some pretty visceral emotions. He's like, I know this style of karate will always exist. And even though I don't believe in it, I do believe in you. And Johnny's like, means a lot, man. He's like, just putting that snake on my back again so Tori and Miguel can have their shot is one thing, but bringing Cobra Kai back all the way after what Kreese and Silver turned it into? And Daniel's like, they did a lot of damage, but if you could lead Tori and Miguel to victory tomorrow, your Cobra Kai will be the Sekai Takai champions, and that's what it'll be known for. And you'll be the sensei who made it happen. Clean slate. It's like, is this feeling like a yes? And Johnny's like, it's a hell yes. And then they bow to each other. Silver is yelling at students about, like, he's like, they can't pull this stunt at the 11th hour. It's like, they lost. He's like, that title was ours. And Wolf's like, it still is. Axel spars, and then Wolf yells at him because he did a move, and he's like, what was that? He's like, I scored a point. He's like, but now they can recover, or you could have ended the fight. And Axel's like, I don't want to win that way. And Wolf lets out a deep breath. He guides Axel aside, like pushes him aside with his staff. He stands against the other kid. He makes this move, whatever, and then there's something like snaps in his shoulder, and the kid screams. And Wolf's like, there's no other way. He's like, there's only winning or not. This isn't a sport. It's a fight. He's like, eyes on me. So he like smacks Axel across the head. And Silver comments, he's like, he says something about the way he looks at Samantha LaRusso, and Wolf asks, like, does this girl mean more to you than victory? If the answer is yes, you've already lost. It's like, we do not seek the approval of the weak. So Johnny stands at the dojo with Miguel and Tori, and he's like, back where it all started. Miguel was his first student, and Johnny was Tori's first sensei. They've gone through a lot now, with Cobra Kai and everything like that, but it doesn't matter like what happened, because they're going to make this their Cobra Kai. They're going to show them, how we do things in the valley. So it's kind of like a training montage, hitting dummies, and Daniel and Sam come in with like the pitching machine. So then they like blocking like pitches, like balls that get shot at them, smashing like wood panels. Axel, we see him beating up a guy. We see Zara, doing some trading, fighting, stuff like that, flipping around. Miguel and Tori like spar with, or Miguel's like fighting. Tori's like sparring with Sam. Miguel like fights with like Hawk and that. And then later, Johnny tries, sitting outside in the parking lot by the building. He tries giving Miguel like some pizza. He's like, here, like have this as some protein after working your ass off. And Miguel's like, well, I guess there might be some protein in there. He's like, I don't have much of an appetite. And Johnny's like, don't tell me it's pre-fight jitters. He's like, I've never seen you look better. And Miguel says that maybe it's too much adrenaline, because he can't wait to pay back Axel for what he did to Robbie. And Johnny's like, yeah, I get it. He's like, but you can't go into a fight thinking like that. He's like, I used to do that. It's also how I lost to LaRusso in '84. It's like, I was a way better fighter. He's like, sure, maybe he's caught up by now, but then he only trained for 6 weeks. He's like, I should have destroyed him. But, I was too hell-bent on revenge for the poop that he pulled. Even though I pulled a lot of poop on him too. It's like, LaRusso didn't fight for revenge. He fought to honor everything that he'd learned, to show guys like me that they couldn't, or that I couldn't get the best of him. So Miguel's like, understood, sensei. He's like, I'm going to fight to honor everything you taught me. And then Johnny's like, being your sensei is the best thing I've ever done. He's like, do me a favor, fight for yourself too. It's like, to honor how far you've come. So inside, Sam mentions to Tori, she like the move. She's like, this is what my dad learned in Okinawa. And she's like, think of it as a last resort. So it's like the drum move, like going side to side. And then Daniel and Amanda come up, and Amanda's like, haven't you trained like enough for one day, whatever? And Daniel's like, hey, if you love karate, you can never get too much of it, unless, of course, it's the night before a title fight. And he's like, do you want us to give you a lift home? And Tori's like, no, that's okay. Sensei Lawrence and Robbie are going to give me a ride, but thanks. And Daniel's like, big day tomorrow, so try to get your rest. They start to leave, and Tori kind of looks anxious, and Amanda like notices. She's like, is everything okay? And she's like, yeah, I was just thinking about the first time I came in here. I sparred with Miguel and made friends with Aisha, and then met Sam at the beach club. It's been a strange couple of years, the toughest of my life, but also kind of the best. And when I think about the good parts, a lot of them are because of you guys. You helped me, he says to Amanda, she's like, you helped me get back into school after all the poop I pulled on Sam. And to Daniel, she's like, and you let me join Miyagi-Do, no questions asked. And I bailed on you right before the tournament to fight for Kreese. And now Sam's teaching me the advanced moves of Miyagi-Do. It's like, no one besides my mom has ever shown me that much kindness. So thank you. It's like, I don't know what I did to deserve it. And Amanda's like, well, I'll tell you what you did. You took every punch that life threw you, and you kept fighting. Sure, I didn't always agree with the way you fought, but we all make mistakes, even me, some would argue. And Daniel's like, what matters is how willing we are to acknowledge those mistakes and how we move on from them. And you've done that better than most people. You both have, because of course he's got to include Sam, because she's right there. So yes, you absolutely deserve some good in your life. And Sam's like, just like you deserve to win. And then it cuts to like the next day, Tori's in her gi. Iron Dragons walk in. Zara's walking, live streaming on her phone. She's got a smile, like hand on her hip. Johnny's like, he says to Tori, he's like, ignore her BS. Keep your head in the game. Dimitri, he comes in, he sees like Hawk and Moon, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry I'm late. He's like, I decided to change my number. He's like, 818 or 828 sounds like pretty nice, but I think 626 has a good ring to it. And Hawk's like, wait, that's Pasadena. He's like, you got the wrong number. And then Dimitri's like, oh, didn't I tell you? I got into Caltech. And Hawk's like, dude, what? Are you serious? And Moon's like, what about TMI? Dimitri's like, oh, poor sweet Moon. It's like, it's MIT, not TMI. And she's like, yeah, I know. She's like, that's what we've been calling it behind your back since you wouldn't shut up about it. Hawk says that they're going to go there and maybe they're going to, cure something with the robotic stuff like that. Or Dimitri says that, and Hawk's like, binary brothers for life, and they hug. So they're going to be going to school together. Gunther tells, ladies and gentlemen, to your seats. So Johnny tells Miguel and Tori to focus on what they need to do. Don't worry about overall points. Just win your fight. And he's like, okay. And Miguel's like, no. He's like, there's no way in hell that we're letting Silver buy himself another title. And Tori's like he's right. And, so he's like, we can close the gap. And Johnny's like, badass. It's like, okay. So saying before, they're doing the same thing. 3 rounds, 2 minutes each with unlimited scoring. Knockdowns are worth 10 points. If a down fighter cannot re-engage within 10 seconds, they'll be considered knocked out. An opponent is awarded 20 points. So Wolf tells Zara about Tori, she cannot match your speed and your skills. And Terry Silver's like, and don't let her forget how much real estate you own in her head either. So Tori versus Zara. Zara bows, but Tori doesn't. Then they're allowed to just talk. Zara's like, oh, I just want to say thanks for that little stunt you pulled on my social back in Spain. And you played the slut shaming card, doubled my followers. And Tori's like, what an achievement. Because she's like, who cares? And Zara's like, play it cool all you want, but we both know it eats you up that no matter what happens, everyone still loves me, and they'll never love you. And it's just like, shut up. In the stands, Robbie's like, don't let her push your buttons. And Zara's like, she's like, look around. It's like, you have home field advantage, and most of the people in this valley are cheering for me. So she's like, enjoy your last 15 minutes. After this, you'll just be another notch on my black belt, kind of like Robbie. And that almost like gets a rise out of Tori. So they bow, fighting stances, fight. So swings, ducks, swings, like that. Zara gets a hit, gets a point by hitting Tori like in the face. More moves. There's another hit, but no point because Zara it was a kick to Tori's back. There's moves and blocks. Zara keeps flipping around like dance. Like what is going on? And Sam says to Robbie, he's Zara got in her head. Tori swings a bit, and Zara just keeps ducking or dodging. She kicks Tori in the midsection, gets a point. Then Zara gets another point, then another kick, and then a kick to the jaw. Horn blows. So 0-5. And then, of course, Zara blows a kiss to the crowd. It's like, oh, she's so annoying. Daniel says that she's playing right into her hands, and Amanda's like, Tori will calm down and figure it out. So Johnny goes to her. He tells her, shake it off. He's like, you're only down 5. That's less than a touchdown. Plenty of time to come back. It's like, she's baiting you, making you gas out. And then as he's talking and saying all stuff, his voice kind of starts echoing. Tori can hear the crowd cheering for Zara. Johnny's he says something like, when she's airborne, she's vulnerable, and she loves to show that poop off. Robbie comes up. He's like, Dad, can I have a second? And he's like, yeah. So Tori's like, are you going to tell me to stay centered and find my balance? I would if I could, Robbie. I need her to stay still so I can give her the beatings she's got coming. And Robbie's like, I wasn't going to say any of that. She's like, so what then? You got some genius strategy for how to hit a human tornado who blows kisses to her fans while kicking me in the face? And Robbie's like, no, I don't. And she's like, then what? He like sighs. He's like, I love you, Tori. That's all I was going to tell you. So you can see it works because like it's like some of the tension just oozes away from her. So she like takes his face and she like kisses him, and her fans are cheering. And Zara hears, she doesn't like that. And then, Tara looks over at the crowd, people are taking pictures, and she's like, that's it? And Robbie's like, yeah. And no fudging mercy. Round 2. Fighting stances, ready to fight. Zara like starts flitting around, lots of moving. Tori gets a point. Tori does a flip. Zara follows, and Tori punches her like in the face, point. And then it's like oh dang, because like Tori like doubled. This is weird. I don't even know how to describe it. She'll just like spin sideways or whatever. It knocks her down 10 points. So now it's 13-5. Tori's like up. So Zara keeps like charging. Tori gives like a I don't even know how to describe this. They're like almost like holding on each other, and she kicks her, like bends her foot backwards and like kicks her in the face, like over her shoulder somehow or something like that. So she gets another point. Zara charges again. Tori roundhouse kicks her down, knocked down 10 points. And Silver's like, get up. Tori does this like kind of weird crawl, like jump flip move thing, kicks her in the face, slow motion, blood flies out of her mouth, and Tori yells. It's like, oh wait, because I rewound it. I want to say it again. A tooth goes flying out too. So the ref is like, knockout, winner. Lots of cheers. And then Tori bends down. Welcome to the valley. And Zara, you see Zara, she's like on her back, she's dazed, her eyes are closed, the tooth is next to her head. So welcome to the valley, bitch. And Robbie like hobbles out on his crutches, hugs her. Johnny Miguel hug her, just cheers. Sam is out there, Amanda, and Gunter announces, your new Sekai Takai girls champion, Tori Nichols. The crowd cheers, Tori, Tori, Tori. And Gunter is like, with her win, Cobra Kai is closing the gap on the Iron Dragons. So Iron Dragons have 165 points, Cobra Kai has 155. So they're only 10 points apart. We'll take a short intermission before our final event, the Boys Championship. So then it's like, uh-oh. So Miguel had we saw him like a little earlier. He wrote his card. There's like an octopus on it because there's like whatever inside joke that they had. So it was a card for Sam. And there's like, so he gets it out because he's going to give it to her or something like that. I had to pause it to read it. It's like, thanks for having my back, whatever. And it's like, you're my favorite, whatever, and stuff like that. So he picks up Sam's jacket, like on the bleachers, and this like folded piece of paper falls out. So he picks it up. It's for the study abroad program in Okinawa, Japan. It's like, we are pleased to welcome you into our upcoming freshman class. He sees it, he puts it back in the jacket, and he leaves it in the bleachers. So this is gonna mess him up. He just realized she's leaving and didn't tell him. Daniel's like out, like not in the main floor, like close to concessions or wherever, just the outside part, inside the building still. He sees Silver, so he goes up to him. It's like, do you really need to do this? And so Daniel's like, that was some match. Underdog looks down and out, but comes back to win decisively. Silver's like, kind of puts his hands out. He's like, congratulations. He's like, oh, wait, that wasn't your victory. One of your captains got carried off the mat, and the other didn't even show up. That's how Miyagi-Do will be remembered. I'd love to see the look on your sensei's face if you were alive to see me destroy everything you've worked for. And Daniel's like, it ain't over yet. And Silver's like, might as well be. Axel's a machine. You saw how he dominated Keen, and he's going to decimate Diaz. But let's just say you're right, and by some miracle, he pulls it off. That'll be Cobra Kai on the podium, the dojo that you thought you'd killed once and for all. That's gotta hurt, Danny boy. And he's like, actually, it doesn't hurt at all. Haven't you heard? Cobra Kai never dies. And Silver's expression kind of falls, because that means, he's basically saying Cobra Kai is going to win over the Iron Dragons. So he just walks away. Sam goes up to Miguel. He's like, I don't know how to say it. He's like, I saw your acceptance letter to the exchange program. And she's like, poop. And she's like, Miguel, I didn't want to say anything until after. He's like, it's fine.
He's like, we didn't promise that we were gonna be in the same place after high school. It's just seemed like it might end up that way. And even though Okinawa is a bit of a further commute than Stanford, but it sounds super cool. It's like, you must be pumped. I mean, I'm happy for you. And she's like, I'm really happy. And he's like, more than anything, I just want what's best for you. And Gunter announces, ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. And he's like, I want to hear all about it right after I'm done kicking some ass. Smooch. And Axel sees him kiss. He starts getting angry. It's like, dude, you talked to her for like 5 minutes and you got like this huge crush on her. So Gunter announces his final match. Wolf tells Axel no matter what gi Miguel has on, he trained in Miyagi-Do. After what he's done to his friends, he'll be on the defense. And, there is no defense for what he's about to do. So fighters to the mat, bow, fighting stance, fight. Miguel starts with he gets a point to his gut. Move. Another point for Miguel. He moves. Axel grabs him from behind or something like that. And then Miguel twists, gets another point, then another. So Axel starts getting more aggressive. Miguel kicks him to the face, point. Silver just shakes his head. It's 5-0, Miguel. Overall, it's now 165 to 160. So the Iron Dragons are just up by 5 points. So Silver is first Malik, and now Kovops, I forget his name. He's like, what the hell's wrong with him? And he's like, flip his switch before he loses the whole GD tournament. So Axel comes over, because it's the end of the round. Wolf turns to him. He's like, you've been trained since you could walk, with every advantage in size, strength, speed, and skill. Are you telling me you can't beat a weak nobody from a nothing dojo? If you waste this opportunity, everything I've given you will be for nothing. And he gets close. If you let him win, you will be less than nothing. The horn blares. And Axel he's always grunting. So move. Axel gives a pretty solid kick to Miguel's chest, his foot's flat, and Miguel kind of gets pushed back, and he's kind of surprised by that. I'm probably hurt too. Then he gets 3 points in a row, hits Miguel in the gut, chest, face, and another kick, and another point. So it's 5-5. So it's just like that. He tied it up. Silver starts nodding. Axel does a flip and then a double kick Miguel to the head, sending him straight down. His headband comes off, and he's on the mat. The crowd boos. The ref's knockdown, 10 points. So Miguel's struggling to get up. Axel comes at him. Cocks his fist back, and Miguel, it almost looks like he's blocking in fear. But then the horn goes off before he can hit, and then Axel does this it's almost like a Power Rangers move with his hands or whatever, and he turns, and Silver claps. So overall now it's 180 to 160. So Robbie and Tori, they're it's okay, and then Miguel says to Johnny, he's I'm sorry, Sensei, I thought I had him. Johnny's you did. You did have him. And then he had you. That's how fights go. That's how life goes. We all get our asses handed to us sometimes. He's there's going to be more where that came from. He's I guarantee it, on and off the mat. But I've never known anyone who could take a poop kicking and fight back harder than you. And Miguel's thanks, Sensei, but I'm further behind on points. I don't know if I can make it back in one round. And Johnny's who gives a poop about the score? Points are for wussies. He doesn't say wussy. So just go out there and give them the best 2 minutes of karate you've got. Everything you learn, every lesson, every win, every loss. Leave it on the mat. Go all in. And then flashback to Johnny saying, go all in, season 1 Miguel. He looks so young and everything. And while Johnny's standing next to Kreese, he's you got it? And Miguel's yes, Sensei. He starts to put his headband back on, but Johnny's screw that, this headband. He takes his black one off and ties it on Miguel. It's you're Cobra Kai. But I think it's is it a requirement you're supposed to wear that? I don't know. And then Miguel's grandma stands up and she's kick his ass! But she says in Spanish, and people are kind of surprised. So then others start cheering in English. Axel is surprised when he hears the cheering, whatever. So Silver goes up to him. End this, definitively. Wolf comes up to him. His spine has been injured once before. If targeted correctly, it can be broken. He leaves himself open for the roundhouse kick when he pivots. And Axel's I can beat him, Sensei. I don't need... And he's what was that? And Axel's yes, Sensei. So this isn't going to be good, right? On the mat, Axel charges. Miguel gives a solid punch, straight to his nose. There's blood. And Miguel
is like thinking back to Johnny's like unorthodox training, like techniques, like pushing him down into water in the pool is like, use your legs, whatever. And Miguel like having like kick like board after board after board, to try to break them. And so he goes, like kicking. He gets another point. He thinks back to like fighting Robbie, and he does a move. He gets another point. He turns. Wolf's like, there it is. Which is like, is that obvious? Because he's kind of center. He's almost has his back completely to Axel. Axel thinks back to Wolf's command about his back and all this like that. Silver is like, now. So Axel turns, and then he looks at Sam, and you can tell she's concerned because she's like, is something going to happen? Is he going to get hurt? Then he turns to Miguel, who still has his back to him. So he makes his move, he goes forward, but then he does like a low sweep. And then Wolf just like bows his head in disappointment. Miguel flips and lands, kicked his head. Axel gets up and charges, but then Miguel dodges, gets another point, twists and knees him to the chest. There's a point, Axel grabs him, like falls back to like flip him, like over, like throw him over. But Miguel thinks back to I think it was like the fight at the LaRussa house. So when he goes flying over, he lands on his feet, and then he moves towards Axel right away, keeps charging. He thinks back to like other fights, so he gets a point, another point, roundhouse to the face, point. It's 15-15 now. Miguel kind of goes like almost like in a Spider-Man pose, and he thinks back to when he first stood again after being paralyzed. He moves, spin, kicks to the face. Axel goes down, and then the horn blares, and Miguel's like, yeah! And the ref's like, knockdown, winner. So Miguel wins. Johnny hugs him. Tori hugs him. The rest of the group. Then Axel just like kind of walks past Silver and Wolf. Sam's like, I knew you could do it. Gunter announces, it's my honor to congratulate Tori Nichols and Miguel Diaz. And both are like holding up trophies. So like, that's it. It's like, it's over, right? Axel sits, and Wolf's like, I am ashamed to be your sensei. And Axel stands up. You are ashamed? I am ashamed to be your student, but I never have to feel that shame ever again. And he turns to walk away. Wolf grabs him by the shoulder, and Axel kind of forcefully like shrugs his hands off, and he walks away. So then Gunter gets back. This leaves us only to declare our overall dojo champion. But we cannot do that because for the first time in our long and storied history, the Sekai Takai has ended in a tie. Because it's 180 to 180. And the man asks Danny, he's like, what does that mean? Gunter continues, fortunately, we have a protocol in place for just such an occasion. A winner must be proclaimed. Per tradition, our overall champion will be determined by one final match between the dojos to be fought by their senseis. Like, what? That seems kind of nuts that they're going to make the senseis fight. Because what if, like, Kreese was out there? Kreese, he's old. He can fight. He can definitely put on a fight. But if it was like Kreese versus Wolf? So then Silver says, Wolf, they've just given you your last chance. Don't blow it. And Wolf kind of smiles. Oh, I won't. So Carmen talks to Johnny, and he's like, oh, are you worried? And she's like, no. She's like, I know what I signed up for. She's like, are you? And then stupid Silver comes up. Why should he be worried? It's just karate. What's the worst that could happen? He can get paralyzed or like something, or severely injured. So then he sees the baby like in a little car seat, and he bends over. Oh, hey, little one. Beautiful. Congrats to both of you. And best of luck tomorrow. I bet you didn't expect it to be all on your shoulders when you put that gi back on. But hey, that's life, isn't it? Full of unintended consequences. And then the baby, he's like, bye-bye, sweetheart. So Johnny tells Carmen, he's like, give me a minute. And he gives her like a kiss. He goes over to Daniel. He's like, I know you hung up your gi, but how about putting it on one more time and being my sensei? And Daniel's like, I thought you'd never ask. And they bow to each other. Then Silver's on his yacht. He's drinking. He talks to his long-haired goon. He says, he's like, I'm not leaving anything to chance. He's like, they said that, we didn't have a chance. Or, he says like something about Diaz and Nichols. He's like, Johnny's built a nice little family for himself. I suppose he'd do just about anything for them, especially if they were to come under threat. He's like, let's have you pay his wife and daughter a little visit. Get us an insurance policy. The goon's like, furniture stores are one thing. Sure you want to go there? And Silver's like, do as I ask, and this yacht's all yours when I shuffle off this mortal coil.
The goon's like, "That's very generous of you, sir. Sensei." So then Terry's like, "My car is at the dock. Take the dinghy. Get it done." And so the goon like bows. He goes up. There's kind of like a bang or like a thud. And Silver's like, "Watch the deck, Dennis. It's not yours yet." And then Dennis comes like tumbling down the stairs. There's like blood on the side of his face. It's like by his ear and throat. It's like I'm not really sure what happened. Did he just get hit hard or did he get cut? So Terry stands up, grabs the bottle, smashes it against the sink down there. He goes up with like broken bottle. And then he sees Kreese smoking a cigar. He's like, "You should have stayed home, John." And Kreese is like, "And miss your rented dojo get beaten by Cobra Kai?" And Silver's like, "You were there. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. You always did love lurking in the shadows. I hope it was worth it, because you're not making it back to shore." And Kreese is like, "Well, one of us isn't. I saw you talking to Johnny on the way out. I recognize that look. So whatever it is you got planned, it ain't gonna happen." And Silver's like, "Isn't that noble and pathetic? After all this time, after he rejected you over and over and over, you still can't shed that weakness." And Kreese is like, "On the contrary, he's a source of strength. He always has been a student worthy of my dedication, who has since surpassed his teacher." And Silver's like, "That's a low bar, John. His teacher isn't what he used to be." And Kreese is like, "Let's find out." So Silver picks up the broken bottle. "Yeah, let's." And he's like, "Really, Terry? I thought we were warriors, and warriors fight with honor." And Silver's like, "Warriors fight with whatever they have. Come on, let's do this." And Kreese is like, "So be it." He like flings his cigar at Terry's face, hits him like above the eye. So Kreese kicks the bottle out of his broken bottle out of his hand, knocks Silver down. Silver kicks him while he's on his hands and knees. It couldn't have been that strong of a kick. He gets up, he swings, but Kreese grabs his arm, kind of like bangs it against this, like the side of the boat, and then you hear like bones crunch, and Silver groans. But then he manages to punch Kreese. I guess it was maybe his other hand or something like that. He kicks Kreese, who like falls over. He knocks over this like container of gasoline just sitting up on the deck. It starts like glug 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 like coming out, and Silver's like, come on." Kreese punches, but Silver blocks it and then hits him in the gut. Then hits Kreese in the face. Silver tries kicking, but then Kreese grabs his leg, pulls him forward, and he like his back hits the floor. Silver kicks Kreese again while he's on his back. Kreese comes at him, but then Silver pulls him down and is like, he rolls and is like straddling him. He punches him in the face. He's like, "Ah, yes." And he's like kind of pushing down his throat. "This is how it was always supposed to end, John." And then, and so he's got his hand there, and Kreese puts his hand up by Silver's face. He's like, Silver's like, "You've been fighting your whole life. It's only fitting that you go out on your shield." And I'm pretty sure that's what he said. It's like, "Wait, what?" So then he like hits him again. Kreese is like reaching for a cigar butt that's like too close to like his right side. He's like wheezing, and then Silver's like, "Don't worry, it'll all be over soon." And he like cocks his arm back, but then Kreese reaches, grabs the cigar. Silver like looks like, what's he doing? Kreese tosses the cigar over, and Silver's like, "No." And Kreese is like, "Mercy, no mercy." Boom, boom, the ship, huge, it's engulfed in flame. There's no way they survived. And that's the end. I mean, they were blown up. I mean, I guess there's so much water, but it's like they blew up. That's the end of 14. And that's why it's like that. I'm like, holy crap. I don't want to like wait 2 seconds and then watch the next episode. It's just like, I want to like take that in and think about it. So that was pretty crazy. So that is the second to last episode ever of Cobra Kai. All right, Daredevil, Born Again. So we got 2 episodes. And I mean, overall, it's we're back. It's great. We got Daredevil, we got other characters. We got Kingpin, and it feels just like we're back. But what I will say is, while these episodes were really good, the first 15 minutes of the first episode was like, holy crap. I mean, that almost felt like an entire episode right there. I mean, it just like jumps into it. The rest of the episode, it's like not bad. And the second episode, I mean, it's good. But then the end of the second episode, it like picks up again. So
it's not like just pure adrenaline, which it shouldn't be, because that would just be too much. They were really good, but I wouldn't say it's like oh, this is the best thing ever. But it's super strong. I mean, this is great, and I don't know why they did 2 episodes at once, but let's just get into it. So I guess we'll call this season 1, episode 1, because it's a different Daredevil show. And I almost forgot. For some reason I was thinking there's only 2 seasons of Daredevil, but there's 3. So Daredevil Born Again, season 1, episode 1, Heaven's Half Hour. I think that's what it was. So we see in the city, we see little Nelson, Murdoch, and Paige, because that's like what they said at the end of episode 3. I think they wrote on a napkin or something like that. The 3, Matt, Foggy, and Karen exit this little office. They talk about going out for a bite. They talk about places, a bunch of places just like shut down over the years, whatever. They end up at Josie's bar, which I think we've seen that before. Karen suggests to Matt that they leave, and he's like, oh, that might violate the Friends Code or something like that. This one cop, his name's Cherry, he's like retiring. He's talking to this other cop, Angie. She's giving him a hard time about what's he gonna do, and they need him and stuff like that. And Cherry's like, Daredevil, White Tigers, like they're the future. It's like, we're obsolete. And there's like footage of White Tiger stopping like a convenience store robbery, like on the bar TV, like from like the security camera in there. Foggy is chatting with Kristen McDuffie from the DA's office, and Karen noticed, she's like, mentions to Matt, it's like, he doesn't have the game to talk to her. And Matt's like listening, and he's like, he called the firm MN&P. So they kind of chuckle, and Karen's like, should we rescue him? And Matt's like, hell no. He's like, I just wish we had popcorn. Then Foggy's phone rings, and Matt like listens in. He's talking to this guy, Benny, his client, and Foggy, he's like, well, stay there. He's like, I'm just around the corner. And Benny's like, but there's someone downstairs. So we see like someone picking the lock with like a paper clip, and then there's a fly, and then it gets impaled with that same paper clip. So it's like, okay, who could this be? Because the end of season 3, there was Dex, and then he had like the bullseye in his eye after his back was fixed or something like that, I think it was. So outside the bar, Foggy tells Matt and Karen that it's Benny, that ever since that thing at Red Hook, he's been getting threats, so he stashed him. And Matt's like, you stashed him? How exactly are you stashing people? And Foggy's like, he's at my apartment. It's just down the street. And Benny's still on the phone. He's like, I hear him. And Foggy says, it's a secure building. He's like, you're safe. And he tells Matt that he's paranoid. He must be high. Matt's like, he doesn't sound high. And he asks Foggy, he's like, why didn't you tell me about the threats? And so Foggy thought it was just Benny being Benny. Then they hear like objects crashing over the phone, and Benny cries out, it's like, no, 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 no. And then he's like groaning. Matt tells him, he's like, stay here. So he's like, just keep calling him. And Foggy's like, look, I'm sorry. I maybe didn't want to give you an excuse. And Matt just like looks at him and turns, because he didn't want to be Daredevil, I guess, or whatever, or he was done. Daredevil swings his way there. He's like running across rooftop. He's like, he still hears a phone call, and Benny's like, Foggy, he wanted to know where you were. And there's like a metallic clicking. He's like, I'm sorry. And he's like, what? Who? Someone is lining up a sniper target with a bullseye. And then he pulls down a mask. So this is Dex, or quote unquote Dex, what they call him. So DD hears a gun cock. He turns, he starts running back towards Josie's bar. So they're still standing outside, and Foggy is trying to call Benny back. Then he tells Karen, he's like, I don't know what he's talking about. He said someone's looking for, and then he gets shot. Like on the chest off the side. He goes down. Karen screams his name. She's like, Foggy. A couple of people like exit the bar, and they get shot. Karen like ducks down. Someone's like crossing the street. You can't see who it is because of the light and smoke. And then he throws like a smoke grenade into Josie's. He's wearing all black, so it's bullseye. And the closed caption even calls him that. He raises his gun. He's like, hello, Karen. Because she had taken out her pistol from her purse, but Daredevil's like swinging back. He knocks Bullseye into through the bar window. Bullseye's like shoot. Daredevil starts hitting him. They're fighting. They're both getting hit. Daredevil's like, he's delivering more punches, but there's a lot of smoke and sparks inside. People are trying to get out. I feel like Daredevil should have just like nailed him. Should have just totally dominated. outside, Karen's like putting pressure on Foggy's chest, because again, it's just like to the left. She's like, you have to stay awake. Cherry and Angie come out, so they call like active shooter. They're trying to help people out. Daredevil and Bullseye are still fighting. The fight takes him into this like back room. Bullseye's just like, he just keeps throwing stuff at all these people. Like he has like, like a million blades, and he's just like killing anyone around. Daredevil's like trying to block stuff as he's throwing it at him. And then it's almost like Bullseye's retreating, so he's like breathing heavy. He starts going up the stairs, and there's like this guy, coming down the stairs. He throws a blade at him. He punches this lady. Daredevil takes out the light with his billy club. It's weird because he can't seem to stop Bullseye, and he actually has a bunch of blades sticking out of him. He's like a pin cushion. Then Daredevil hears Karen talking to Foggy. He's like, they're going to be here any minute. Bullseye goes up another flight of stairs, and he makes it onto the roof. But then he like looks back, no Daredevil. So then he must have gone back outside to come up. He swings down, he hits him, punches, he rips his mask off. And then he like gives him 3 punches, like a knee to the face. He's holding like Bullseye sort of like over the edge. Foggy and Karen are like straight down below, and then Foggy's just like, his eyes are just open looking, and then his heartbeat, it just like stops. And Karen's like kept like, it's like Foggy, and then Daredevil cries out, why? And he's like crying. Bullseye chuckles, and then Daredevil just like lets him fall off the 4-story building. And it's just like, oh my God, he just dropped him off the building. Like, holy crap. So there's like blood all over, Karen, Foggy's just like staring up. Karen's like crying. And then she turns and she sees Bullseye's body. She looks up, Matt's like crying. Then he like takes off his mask. Cherry comes up and sees him. He's like, Matt? So Cherry knows that Matt is Daredevil. Bullseye is still alive. It's like, are you serious? So I don't know if it's he got metal put in him or what special, I forgot what metal. It's not adamantium. I don't know if he's got a healing factor or whatever, but he's like, his eyes flicker. He's still alive. It's like, man, I thought he was gone. So Matt just like drops the helmet. He's like crying. The helmet falls off the roof, and then we get the opening credit. So that was just like the first 50 minutes. It's like, crap. Holy cow. So then Matt's sitting by a window, just like kind of feeling the sun. He's drinking coffee, and we find out it's 1 year later. So there's mention of like a recall election on the news. Matt puts on like a suit jacket. He picks up a flyer. I thought it said something about a 1 year memorial, maybe for I don't know what it was. Maybe it's something else. I'm trying to remember. Then we see Wilson Fisk. He's eating this like small fancy meal. It's like fish and 1 asparagus. It's like, is he on some sort of diet or something? Because I mean, he's slimmed down, and whatever. He's got his wedding ring on. He goes to the closet. There's like a white suit. He's about to grab it, but then he grabs like a gray one instead. So there's all these. Then it cuts to all these like gang bosses kind of squabbling over like crossing territories like that. So Vanessa tells them not to fight when they're about to make millions. Why fight about? Because they're talking about like paying tolls and stuff like that. She's like, you're about to make millions. So she's like, Red Hook is exempt from any taxes, tolls, or other payment. So there's a bunch of people at the table. She reads over the updates. She says, the collective return on this month's investment is $7.73 million. That will be distributed to them today through the customary wire transfers. And she's like, 10% of your organization's operating profit is due by midnight tonight. She's like, I would prefer wire, but if you must pay cash, arrangements can be made. So then there's like kind of like a rolling up door, like metal door, and Fisk walks in. And he's like, Vanessa? The other people look at him, they get up. And then the one dude, his name is Luca, he's like the last one to get up. The doors close, he sits. She says, you left the bed I sat beside for months while you recovered, and for what? And now you walk in here and end the meeting with the 5 families by simply standing in a doorway? And Fisk is like, you kept them in line. They respect you. And she's like, they respect the money I make them. Protection makes people scared. Profit makes them loyal. And she's like, how long are you back for? And he's like, as long as you'll have me, Vanessa. I was broken, shattered. For months, I had to put myself back together. As I did, 2 things shone bright and clear inside me.
beacons of who I was and who we could be. The first was my undying love for you. And she's like, and the second? What we could do for this city. And I would have to step away, and anything I was involved with could never be perceived as illegal. And Vanessa's like, when you were gone, I made this business bulletproof. And he's like, good, that's right. There can be no gray area. I've been informed that I have the 25,000 signatures. It's time. Then we see this like a BB report. So BB Urich, she's like asking, and it's just like camera footage of her asking people questions, like on the street videos. She asked them about like the state of crime here in New York. She's like, do you feel safe on the streets? And one person's like, Daredevil's been gone for a really long time. And someone's like, crime is just so out of line over here. It's like, you can't even go out with your family. You got to worry about getting mugged. And the first person's like, we need him back. So Matt shows up at Murdoch and McDuffie. So he has a new firm. She's already there, and he comments that she beat him there or whatever. And she's like, I made coffee. And she just wanted to catch him alone to see how he is before tomorrow. And he says he's fine. And she's like, that's what people who aren't always say. So he like chuckles. He's like, really? He's like, I'm all right. And then she's like, have you heard from her? He's like, I have not. So Matt's on a stand in court for Bullseye. He's like, as you know, I've stood in this court many times, delivered summations, called witnesses, and defended the innocent to the best of my ability. Though as I sit here on the other side of the court, it occurs to me that justice will not be served today. It won't be served because whatever sentence is passed, Foggy Nelson, only his mother calls him Franklin, will still be dead. And it's just crazy that they killed Foggy. It's like, hey, we're starting with the Daredevil show. You want to come back? We're killing you in the first 15 minutes. So he says only his mom called him Franklin. So he'll still be dead. He's like, it won't be, justice won't be served because, and he hears like footsteps coming up, and it's Karen. So she enters and like stands at the back. So he's like, apologies, Your Honor. Takes a deep breath, like sighs. He's like, it won't be served because I don't get to see him again. He kind of like chuckles softly, like points to Karen. We don't get to see Foggy again today or tomorrow or ever because my friend is dead. Killed on a whim of a violent and disturbed man, a self-styled assassin with a grudge out to murder his perceived enemies. But in the absence of justice, the court can punish this man, and I urge you to do so to the fullest extent the law allows, because that punishment, that is the closest any of us will ever get to justice. Thank you, Your Honor. They're like, thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Mr. Poindexter, if you would like to respond, I will allow it before sentencing. And he's like, I have nothing to say, Your Honor. So then the judge's like, your response does not surprise me. You showed no mercy that night in Hell's Kitchen and have shown no remorse since. So this court feels compelled to respond in kind. Benjamin Leonard Poindexter, you have been convicted of 11 counts of murder in the first degree. In accordance with the laws of New York State, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for each count to be served consecutively. So Matt nods, and Karen has like her hand over her mouth because this. I guess this is what they wanted. In like the outside in like waiting area, there's like sitting. Karen said that she thought about just slipping out, but she figured not today. And he's like, "How are you?" She says she's good. San Francisco's nice. It's different from New York, but not too different. He asks if they can go somewhere, maybe grab a cup of coffee or something. And she like sighs. She's like, I don't think so, Matt. She's like, I don't really want to do that. And he's like, He kind of scoffs. He's like, it's funny. I know you're lying. I'm just not sure who to, me or yourself. He's like, you tell me, Karen. What do you expect me to do here? What do I need to do to have a conversation with you? I've tried calling. I've left messages. And she's like, no, I know, you're right. And he's like, so what do you want? And she kind of says, she's like, I just was busy. He's like, oh, don't give me busy. He's like, I can. And then she scoffs. She's like, my friend died too, Matt. And then I lost you. You didn't talk to me for weeks. She's like, I was halfway in and then halfway out. And he's like, it takes a minute, Karen. He's like, what do you expect from me? And she's like, okay. She's like, I don't want to do this. I came for Foggy, and I came to say that I'm sorry it ended, and I'm sorry that I didn't call, but I'm really glad that you're doing so well. He like kind of chuckles and stuff, and she's like, what? He's like, great, thanks. I refuse to believe that a tragedy had to destroy everything. And she's like, but it did. She's like, what are you going to do about Daredevil? And he's like, I made a promise to myself that I'd let the system handle it, all of it. Besides, I'm not him anymore, and I won't let myself be. And she's like, you think that will help? And he's like, I don't know. It doesn't make it worse. And she takes something out of her purse and then gets up. And he's like, no, Karen, please don't. Please don't. He's like, can you just wait for 5 minutes? She's like, I found this at Josie's. I thought you might want it. So it's like a tip of a Daredevil horn. And she's like, take care of yourself, Matt. And he like sighs. And he picks up the piece. So then in his apartment, he's cooking. He hears someone's TV. It's like, my name is Wilson Fisk. So Matt turns off his music and turns on a TV. So he says that vigilantes run rampant. Good cops are afraid. Bad cops, they just don't care. He's like, the streets are no longer safe for decent people. So tonight he's making a commitment to fix the system, to fix our city. He's like, tonight I'm declaring my candidacy for mayor of New York. So Matt's head kind of like falls a little, and whatever he's cooking is like burning. So Wilson is told he's still behind like 2 other people. He's like, but that's to be expected. This lady, I think her name is Sheila, she says they need to refine his message points for the debate. He's like, my message is very clear. This other dude, I forgot his name. It's on the tip of my tongue. But he's like, if your polls are as good as you say, then neither Mr. Fisk nor his candidacy needs refining. And Sheila's like, she says she's been doing this a long time. She understands some of his ideas and staff are refreshingly unconventional, but they are a dark horse in this race. And then this other guy, like in the room, interrupts, and loudly he says that he's right. He's been watching the socials. This is a young guy. This is James Gandolfini's son. He says his name is Daniel. That's it. This guy's name is Daniel. So he's been watching the socials, and everyone is talking about him. He's like, you're even in the BB report, and you're blowing up, sir. Fisk can fix it is trending hard, and we should not change a thing. So Sheila's like, if we could get back to the agenda. So Fisk stands. He's like, what's your name, son? And he's like, Daniel Blake. He's like, Daniel, I'm impressed with your enthusiasm. Tell me, you're a young person living in the city. Why would you vote for me? And he's like, straight up, because you get poop done. You made things happen for yourself. Now you'll make things happen for New York. And I mean, Mayor Fisk? It's like, that's the coolest fudging thing in the planet. And then he's like, where did you find him, Sheila? And she's like, he canvassed 2,000 signatures for us, and he was cheap, sir. He's like, yeah. And so they leave. Matt is sitting in a conference room at their office. Kristen asks if he's busy, and she reminds him that he has a client meeting this afternoon. She'd do it herself, but she's got a deposition. Matt's like, remind me. So she's like, Heather Glenn, doctor in Tribeca. He's like, right, malpractice? And Karen's like, or Kristen, she's like, we didn't get that far. Can you just meet her and see if we're the right fit? So he walks through the city. He's like, listening to people like talking, watching a debate or something. There's going to be a debate tonight. And someone's like, at least Fisk is interesting. And someone's like, why would anyone vote for him? He's a crook. This part I don't understand, because then like newspapers get like slapped down at the newsstand, and the headline is Wilson Fisk campaign gains momentum heading into polls. Matt stops, but it's like, I don't think he could read that, because he doesn't like touch the paper or anything. He's waiting in a coffee shop, and then Dr. Glenn comes in. She says that she doesn't usually meet in coffee shops, but anything for Kristen. It's because they go back. And he's like, oh really? And she's like, yeah, I used to consult for her when she was in a district attorney's office. And Matt's like, oh, she didn't mention it. I used to face off against her. You could say that we went from adversaries to partners. He's like, so look, why don't I jump right in and ask, what are you looking for in legal representation? And she's like, excuse me? He's like, what are you hoping Murdoch and McDuffie can do for you? She's like, I'm a little confused. I was just about to ask you what you're looking for to get out of therapy. And Matt's like, what? And she's like, Kirsten said you were looking for a therapist. So Matt chuckles. He's like, ah.
and she told me you were looking for a lawyer. And so Heather's like, Kristen. And Matt's like, wow, I can't believe she did that. And Heather's like, it's kind of funny. And he's like, what a waste of time. And she's like, hey, she did it to both of us. And Matt's like, that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's annoying. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, it's very annoying. She's like, so do you want me to get you a to-go cup for your coffee? He's like, no, that's fine. He's like, I didn't mean to be rude. I'm just not sure what she was thinking. And Heather's like, yeah, she knows I don't date lawyer. And Matt's like, oh, really? And she's like, yeah, your hours suck and you argue everything. And Matt's like, okay, that's kind of a sweeping generalization, and she's like, see what I mean? And he like laughs. He's like, all right, please, Heather, forgive me. Please sit. He's like, I apologize. I've had a hell of a week. I'm going to kill Kristen though. And she's like, oh, please do, for both of us. So then he's like, so you're from Queens, huh? And Heather's like, how did you know? He's like, your accent is still there. She like kind of clicks her tongue. She's like hell it is. He's like, it's there. You've worked to shorten the A's and the O's, but you can still hear the effort. It's slight, but it's there. And he's like, don't feel bad. It's a blind thing. And she chuckles. She's like, that's, wow. So where are you from? And he's like, 37th and 8th. She's like, Hell's Kitchen. And he's like, mm-hmm. And she's like, tough guy? And he chuckles. He's like, not at all. He's like, you been to the kitchen lately? It's like, not Queens. That's rough. And she laughs. She's like, have you been to Queens lately? He chuckles. He's like, yeah, but only for Sal, Chris, and Charlie's. And she's like, the lawyer from Hell's Kitchen's got good taste in sandwiches? He's like, mm-hmm. So then the conversation continues and like kind of fades out. And they're both like smiling as they talk. So at the office, he comes up behind her. He like stomps his cane down like a couple times. And she's like, oh, how'd it go? He's like, that's not funny. That is inappropriate. It's unethical. And it's kind of creepy if I'm honest. And he like walks away and she follows. She's like, and how did it go? He's like, haha. He's like, you're an insane person. She's like, no, I'm your friend. And you needed a little something, if you know what I mean. And so does she. He's like, no, I don't know what you mean. And it was a disaster. She's like, you liar. He's like, I'm not lying. And she's like, I swear to God, I can read a vibe with people. He's like, no, you can't. And she's like, when are you seeing her again? He's like, I'm not having this conversation with you. And she's like, in all seriousness, you need this. It's time. Don't mess this up. He's like, I don't have time for this. And then she's like, Cherry's here in the conference room. He's like, right now? And she's like, you want to tell me why you invited your hatchet man? And Matt's like, he's not. He's my investigator. So he tells her, and he's like, stay out of my private life. And she says that that's never going to happen. So then he's like, all right, you can text me your number just so I can apologize for your inappropriate behavior. And she's like, uh-huh. So in the conference room, Matt thanks Cherry for coming. Cherry's like, I talked to a lot of people. Half the cops hate Fisk's guts. The other half would dive off the Chrysler building for him. And Matt's like, what about the campaign? And he's like, completely buttoned up, every dollar accounted for, every income source absolutely cleaned. He came in late. He came in with a lot of cash, but it's working for him. They say his wife's some kind of investment sorceress. And Matt laughs. He's like, if I didn't know better, I'd say he sounds sincere. Like maybe he wants to actually do something for his city. Cherry's like, look who you're talking about. The man crushes and he's like, I know. He's like, you think I don't know? It's like, I know well. If the city actually elects him, then maybe New York's getting the mayor it deserves. And Cherry's like, you asked me. That's pretty GD cynical, Matt. And he's like, And he's like, or maybe I'm just wising up. And Cherry's like, so you want me to go on with this? Matt's like, no, let it go. It's not our job. I mean, you could. No, just let it go. He's like, hey, thanks. So then there's another BB report. She asked the lady if she'd vote for Wilson Fisk. And she's like, he's an animal. And that sort of person brings out the worst in other people as well. And someone's like, politicians, criminals, they're all the same breed, man. And then, she's like, why are you even talking about this? He supposedly crushed a guy's head. And someone's like, it's a good rumor, crushed his head. I mean, I'd actually like to see that. So Fisk talks about, it's almost a year now since those cops were murdered in a bar by a vigilante. He himself has endured vigilante violence. So he's like, he can assure that there's nothing nuanced about getting shot. The other guy says he agrees. Fisk says that the other guy is like posing. and he proposes registering the vigilantes. And then, that's like making a grocery list of cancers. He's like, I propose treatment. So fans outside are cheering for him. They want to shake his hand. So his name was, I think it was Buck. He's telling people like, back up. Then Fisk is like, it's okay. And then he's like, sees him. He's like, well, it's been some time, hasn't it? Matt is standing there. He's like, it has. I was wondering if we could have a little chat. And Fisk is like, yeah, I'd be delighted. And Matt's like, thank you. So he starts walking. At a diner, Matt says that he appreciates them finding the time. He's like, your step is lighter. You've lost some weight, gained muscle. And Fisk is like, I'm not going to spar with you, Murdoch. And Matt's like, no. I was like, I wasn't asking you to. And he's like, well, I admit it's not entirely unpleasant to see you again. So Matt like laughs and Fisk chuckles. He's like, it's been a long time. And Matt's like, life has happened. You have children? And Matt's like, no, you? He's like, oh, no. I tried to mentor someone, but, well, that's the closest I've come. And Matt's like, didn't she shoot you in the face? Talking about Echo. And Fisk like smiles and laughs. He's like, yeah, younger generation. What can we do? You're keeping tabs on me? And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm just, call it professional curiosity. He's like, well, what profession would that be? He's like, I'm a lawyer. It's like, I've never been to this place before. I miss Becky's Diner. And Matt's like, me too. Yeah, I don't make it to Hell's Kitchen much these days. And Fisk is like, neither do I. By the look of it, you've come up in the world. And Matt's like, I could say the same about you. And a guy like knocks on the window, gives like a thumbs up to Fisk. So Matt's like, you're a real man of the people now. And he's like, a rich man, by his very nature, is self-serving. A mayor serves his city. And Matt's like, And Fisk's like, you don't seem entirely convinced. And Matt's like, can you blame me? Considering you've tried to kill me a few times over the years. And Fisk's like, as you have. And Matt's like, no. Incarcerate maybe, kill, never. He says, I wonder if your darker half would agree. And Matt's like, that part of my life is over. And Fisk is like, well, tragedy can transform a man. About your friend, I had nothing to do with his death. I kept that promise. And Matt's like, but now the kingpin is back? And Fisk is like, no, he's not. My time away, let's say I followed a road less traveled, and at its end, I found a new man. And Matt's like, the mayor of New York, soon. And he's like, so answer me this. Why is it I can't shake the feeling that you're gaming the system? And Fisk is like, things are not good out there. You could see that, can't you? And Matt's like, New York's what it's always been, with a few unsettling exceptions. And Fisk is like, well, I'm going to make New York a better future. Why did you stop being a vigilante? And Matt's like, vigilante is a loaded word. Is it the parlance of our time? But Matt's like, my best friend was killed. A line was crossed. I felt like I lost a privilege. And Fisk is like, I heard you tried to kill Benjamin Poindexter that night. Matt kind of nods. And Fisk is like, it's hard. It's hard to come to terms with a violent nature, hating the power it has over us. And Matt's like, I was raised to believe in grace, that we can be touched by the divine and transformed into a better person. So you can say to me, you're a new man. I say, fine. But you should know I was also raised to believe in retribution. So if you step out of line, I will be there. And it's just kind of like silence. And Fisk is like, this caution that you're giving me, who is it from? Matt Murdoch? Or you like being on the rooftop with Dex? You liked how it felt, didn't you? Giving no quarter, dispensing justice. And Matt's like, just stay in your lane. I'll do the same. And Fisk is like, I'm going to be the mayor of this town. And when I am, I will not tolerate people running around in silly costumes. The rule of law will prevail. And should you go back to any of your old activities, there will be consequences. Matt gets up. Well then, it appears we really do understand each other. I love a man who rises above his nature. Good luck with that, Murdoch. And Matt's like, good day, sir. TV's on in the dark apartment.
Matt here, he's there. Polls are open. Early turnout appears to be above average as expected. There's a lot of support for Roger Cessna and Diana Montoya, but we are seeing a surprising strong turnout early for Wilson. He turns off the TV. Matt and a doctor walk outside, so they went out and they met. And she's like, you suck as a coffee date, but you're a pretty great dinner date. I can give you that. And he like chuckles. He's like, that's my secret. I like to set the bar low. And she's like, oh, you set it very low. They both laugh. He's like, you gonna tell Kristen we were going out tonight? And she's like, I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. And Matt's like, So Heather's like, I'm icing her as punishment. And Matt's like, punishing your friends? And she's like, He's like, that seems very well adjusted. And she's like, mental health is knowing exactly when and how to act out. Trust me, I'm a professional. So Matt stops and he hears 53% of New Yorkers, Wilson Fisk has been elected the 112th mayor of New York City. And he's like, he won. Fisk won. And she's like, how do you know? He's like, the TV in a bar, good ears, remember? And she's like, wow. He's like, I can't believe it. And she's like, if you don't mind me asking, you seem pretty involved with him. Is there history there? And he like chuckles. He's like, our paths have crossed a few times over the years. He's selling New York a savior. Underneath, he's a monster. And a bunch of people like come like pouring out of a bar, like cheering. Matt kind of pulls the doc like out of the way before she gets like knocked over, and he asks if she's okay, whatever. At Fisk headquarters, just cheers. He looks around, says thank you to those who come to him. He sees Vanessa from across the room. You know, she's standing there, and then she's gone. So up on a rooftop, Fisk looks at the city. Vanessa comes up to him, and he's like, I know about Adam, Vanessa. And, you know, she's kind of quiet, doesn't say anything. And then she's like, do not kill him. He's like, I'm not that man anymore. And she's like, promise me. And he's like, I promise. So the TV shows Fisk giving like his acceptance speech. My fellow citizens, you have ushered in a new dawn, peace in the streets. The doc says you can carry the weight of the city on your shoulders. New York will get by without you. And we see someone like painting on an alley wall. And she says, you know, she doesn't give a fudge or something like that. And Matt's like, doesn't sound like professional advice. And she's like, that's because I'm not your therapist, Matt. And she like kisses him. He's like, no, this is not good. And she's like, what? He's like, I can't stand it when Kristen's right. And they kiss some more. So she goes into her apartment building. Fisk, meanwhile, he's saying it's a long road ahead, much to do tonight on and every night. He's like, I love New York. So I don't know if the person painting, is that supposed to be Muse that we're going to see later? I don't know. So the painting is like Kingpin, kind of like smiling. There's almost like two Fisks, like a shell, like, and then the ones there's like, so like the real one and the fake one or whatever. So then Fisk is like standing, like, and then Matt's like walking through like a crowded sidewalk. He hears someone like calling for help, and then they kind of do like this double screenshot, so it almost looks like they're staring at each other. And that's how the first episode ends. With that ending, you know, I guess that's not like the strongest, shocking ending. I guess it's good that we get the second episode. Season 1, episode 2, Optics. Fisk is sitting at his desk. He seems like upset, probably about, you know, Vanessa and Adam, whatever. This woman wants to like put makeup on him, but he kind of like dismisses or whatever. She adjusts his tie. There's a teleprompter like on a camera in front of him. He's counted down, and he's like, thank you, New York. Vanessa and I, we offer our deepest regards. It's humbling to be sitting here speaking to you as mayor this evening. And there's like a shot of like Times Square, and you can see that Rogers the Musical is still playing. Some of the crowd boos when they see him. So he's like, the beginning of a new year, and most importantly, a new era for the greatest city in the world. The city is in shambles, crime, poverty, a feeling of uneasiness as if any moment things could explode. Matt's on his couch with like a glass of wine and the TV's on. And Fisk is like, but New Yorkers are so tough. We know how to take care of ourselves. We don't need a gun-toting vigilante who wears a skull on his chest, or a man who dresses in a spider outfit, or a guy who wears devil horns to save us. No, we'll be our best once again. So Matt listens and hears a woman's like, Fisk, the mayor? It's like, I just can't. Fisk continues, I made you one promise. And someone else nearby says, what are you going to do? Move to Boston? You hate the Celtics. And another guy's like, I was like, oh, I fudging love him. And Fisk continues, and that is the rule of law will return to New York City. That is what I will deliver to the city of New York, the city that bore me, elected me, the city that I love. Good night and Happy New Year. So then we see this guy goes down in the subway. He has like flowers, talking on the phone in Spanish. And he sees two guys like roughing up another guy because they say something about money or something like that. So the phone guy comes up and is like, hey. And one of them like, this doesn't concern you. And he's like, you're beating up on a guy who can't defend himself. So it does concern me. And then he starts fighting the one guy. The other comes to help him. So then the guy like getting shaken up, he like just takes off running. So then the second guy charges at him, but then ends up like tripping over the first guy who was like knocked down on the floor. He flies over the edge, bam, gets hit by a train. Then the other guy has a gun and a badge. He's like, NYPD, do not move. So these two were cops shaking down this guy, asking for money or something like that. And then, yeah. And they didn't identify themselves to him, but that was pretty bad. So BB report, any thoughts on the disappearance of Daredevil? One guy says that he hasn't heard that name in a long time. He doesn't miss him. He's a clown. It's like, who needs him? More trouble than he's worth. Another guy asks, are the strong obligated to protect the weak? He's like, yeah, they are, but they're kind of whiny about it. And then they start preying on the weak. So Fisk is told his plans for the day. Fire Chief Carter's is 10 a.m. It could be either here or the firehouse. Fisk says the firehouse because Carter is known to be a doubter. So it's best that he goes to him. Then Sheila says, she's like, my thoughts exactly. So after him, they'll have 6 more stops. So she put in another call to Commissioner Gallo. It's their third. And Fisk is like, how old do you think this dusk is? And she's like, excuse me? How old do you think this dusk? How long do you think this dusk has been here? It's old. He's like, Vanessa would know by sight. And he wonders, like, if this one guy sat there, that he was a hero of his father, says his father didn't respect many men. He's like, none actually, except for LaGuardia, I think it was. So she tries to get him back on track. He looks at the itinerary, says that he's really looking forward to meeting District Attorney Hochberg. He's like, these meet and greets, can't we push them? And she's like, these first few days are critical. Optics are going to matter. Establishing connections is how we set the tone with stakeholders who can make or break your agenda. And she's like, and let's be honest, a lot of these people absolutely hate you. And he like laughs, I'm used to that. And she's like, and there's something else. And I'm sorry if this is heading into personal territory. She's like, your wife? And he's like, what about Vanessa? And she's like, okay, well, the inaugural speech tracked better than we expected, especially with the younger constituents. However, Vanessa's resistance to be part of the narrative is hurting you with the more traditional voters. I see. The timing of this is not ideal, but my wife and I, we have work to do. Could you grant us a little leeway? And she was like, absolutely, sir. At the police precinct, Matt's talking to this lady about someone else who's like holding, sobering up, or something like that. Then he hears an interrogation going on. So it's a guy in the subway, he's getting beat up. And one officer is like, here's what's going to happen. Cop killer, you are going to sign a confession. So Matt excuses himself from the woman. He says, I'll call her later. So he goes down the hall. Then a little later, he gets led into a room. That guy is cuffed and there's like blood on him. And Matt's like, Hector Ayala? He's like, those guys tune you up? And he doesn't look. He's like, does it matter? And Matt's like, he chuckles. He's like, yeah, it does. He's like, it matters to me. I'm a lawyer. My name is Matthew. Hector's like, you're the public defender? And he's like, no, I'm a defense attorney. I have my own practice. And Hector's like, I didn't call you. How'd you get here? Or how'd you get in here? And he's like, they're saying you killed a cop. And Hector's like, all I was trying to do was help a guy out. And Matt's like, well, that's not their story. It's like, they're saying you approached 2 officers on a platform. And Hector's like, no, man. Eso hijos de puta on the platform never said they were cops. They never said nothing. Look, all I was trying to do was break up a beating, okay? And Matt's like, so what happened to the officer who, he's like, one of them tripped, trying to take me out. He's like, look, I didn't push him, I swear. I wasn't trying to kill anybody. That's not me. And Matt's like listening to his heartbeat. He's like, and I sure as poop didn't know a train was coming. I mean, 1 second he's there and next he's gone. Matt's like, is there anything you're not telling me? And his heartbeat like thumps. He's like, no man, nothing. So he's like, you're still pretty wired, I'm sure. Everything's a little fuzzy. We need to go over it a few more times before the arraignment. But for now, that's all we need to do. And Hector's like, I can't afford you. And Matt's like, don't worry about that. I'd still like to represent you. You're in good hands, Hector. And he's like, wait, hold up. You're blind? And Matt like chuckles softly and walks out. Fisk is in the car with his Sheila says that after they go to the senior center to want to present, because they'll want to present him the key to the borough. He's like, I'm already the mayor. Why do we need a key to Brooklyn? And then I don't know if it was Buck, I think, says, like it or not, the outer boroughs are your base or something like that. And then I think it was Daniel mentions something about Staten Island or whatever. So Fisk is getting frustrated. Sheila says that the first 100 days are about getting settled in and getting a feel for the office. And she's like, try anything big now and you're painting a target on your back. And he's like, good. Targets draw attention to problems. So Sheila says that he hired her because she knows how politics work in New York City. He sighs and says that she's right. And, now it's all about maintaining the status quo. So then Bucks, I think, says to her that, so he's like, so what, your advice is to do nothing? And Fisk is like, what's going on? Because they're like stuck in traffic. So Daniel is like, oh, there's a big hole. It's like, we'll be around in like a minute. So then Fisk gets out of the car. Sheila's like, she starts stopping. He's like, what are we doing? And she's like, I advise against it, but he's already out. She tells like Buck and Daniel to get him. So Fisk is like, where's the foreman? And then when he comes up, she's like, hey, you're the mayor. How you doing? And he's like, I want you to stop what you're doing and fill that hole. You have the equipment. You have the manpower. And the guy's like, hey, sorry, sir, but it's the red tape. We're waiting on the permit approval. And some people are like out of their cars like filming. And Fisk is like, consider it approved. And he's like, you got it, fellas, hole. And to people gathering, he's like, filling a hole like this is not rocket science. Remember, I told you that I'd get things done. Well, here I am, getting them done. So the crowd cheers. He walks back to like the SUV. And then to Sheila, he's like, I assume that's what you meant by optics? And she's like, yes, Mayor Fisk, it was indeed. And Daniel's like, that was solid work with the hole. Kristen says to Matt, she's like, I send you out for a DUI and you come back with a cop killing? And she's like, with everything that this firm has going on right now? And Matt's like, the cops at the station were beating him senseless. What did you want me to do? He probably wouldn't have made it past the weekend. And for what it's worth, I think he might actually be innocent. She's like, you can barely handle your current caseload. It's like, I would have to act as, second chair. And he's like, a high profile case like this is not the worst thing in the world. And she's like, it's exactly the opposite of what this firm needs right now. And Cherry's like, okay, so my old partner at Midtown slipped me the police report. The other cop said there was no victim. He said it was an unprovoked attack. And Matt's like, well, our client says there was. And Cherry's like, he said. He's like, Matt, you take on this case, it's going to look like you're singing against the whole NYPD. And Matt's like, Kristen, what did I tell you to get you to come over from the DA's office? She's like, you said that I was brilliant, which is true. And he like smiles. He's like, that is true. What else? She said, you said that we'd take on the hard cases. He's like, and impossible odds work is what we do here. And she's like, okay. He's like, thank you. And she's like, I just need Arnie to take over for me on the Rogers depot. He's like, great, I appreciate it. And then Cherry's like, talk to Hector's wife. I need you to find a witness that Hector saved on the platform. I believe him, Cherry. And he's like, okay, so you want me to find a guy on the platform? And he's like, yes. And he's like, how much you want me to push? And he's like, as much as you have to. And do some digging on Hector for me. There's something about his story that doesn't track. He's like, wait, he's innocent or his story doesn't track? And Matt's like, and he kind of laughs. He's like, both. On his way to like the courthouse, Matt and Kristen are questioned by reporters. Matt comments, when they're inside the courtroom, he's like, Drakkar Noir, the scent of choice for New York's finest. So there's lots of officers there, like in the audience part. And she's like, NYPD backs its own. So Hector's brought in.
Matt hears like one officer whispers, like, that's the a-hole who killed my partner. So Matt asks Hector how he's doing. He's like, pretty bad, man. And Matt's like, just hang in there. He's like, this is the first step in a long process. And then he's like, is your wife here? And Hector kind of looks and he's like, no. So someone enters and Kristen curses. And Matt's like, what? He's like, it's the Hawk. And Matt's like, Hochberg? So he's a DA. And the court reporter calls the case. Hector's, so this is what I'm confused. He's charged with murder in the first degree, second degree, and manslaughter. So he's charged with 3 different types of murder for one murder. So Matt says that they'll waive the readings, but not the rights. And Hawk says, given the serious nature of the charges, the people ask that the defendant be remanded without bail. And Matt's like, Your Honor, the defense would ask. And then the judge is like, the people's motion is granted. And Matt's like, Your Honor, if I could. And the judge is like, I said bail is denied. And Matt's like, Mr. Ayala is a decorated Army veteran. He has no record. He served as a CPA for 15 years. He's a pillar of his community. And the judge is like, he's also accused of killing a New York City police officer. Next case, please. And Hochberg's like, thank you, Your Honor. And he walks out. Hector says to Kristen, in good hands, huh? And Matt's like, it's going to be okay. So BB Urich, apparently she gave her number to Daniel, the other night. And he's like, oh, I should have known that you had an agenda. And she's like, well, I'm a journalist, bro. And then she's like, besides, if we can kill it here as friends with political benefits, you get me access to him, I give him a straight line to the under 30 demo. Then who has 2 thumbs and is a hero? And he's like, me. And he's like, phone. And she's like, what? She's like, BS. He's like, condition of this level of access. So she's going to go talk to Fisk, but she can't have her phone. So he says that he's covering his butt so she doesn't post. He tells her, he's like, play softball in there because he's calling in a favor. And she's like, wait, I thought you said that you were his guy. He's like, I am. I might have embellished it a little. And she's like, wow, I can't tell if you're an idiot or an operator. And he's like, well, maybe I don't know what I am. So then Fisk's other guy, Buck, opens the door, tells her she's got 5. So Fisk says that he must say her coverage on his campaign was spot on, and not for nothing, you're one of the first people to take me seriously. And he's like, BB, is that short for something? Beatrice, Betty? And she's like, just BB, I was named for my uncle. And he's like, Ben Urich, who he had a confrontation with. Like, wasn't it like major threatening? Or I don't know if I don't think he killed him. And she's like, yeah. He's like, I knew him. He was a good journalist. And then BB's like, I asked Commissioner Gallo about you on 3 separate occasions. Every time, nothing, not a word. It got me thinking, there must be a story there. And Fisk is like, and is there? She's like, one of my sources at the NYPD tells me that Gallo is now poised to resign. I mean, Gallo is a celebrated police commissioner, maybe the most beloved the city has ever seen. That puts you in a big fat bind. The NYPD's rank and file are planning on standing behind their guy in protest of you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, the force is already woefully understaffed, and you've got vigilante picking up the slack. If you lose the cops, you lose the city. He's like, thank you, Miss Urich. And she's like, just one more question about Mrs. Fisk. And Daniel shuts his eyes. He's like, oh. And he's like, I'm sorry, but I'm out of time. And Buck's like, just wait. So she starts walking out, and then she turns, and she's like, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope we can speak again soon. And Fisk doesn't look up at her. And Daniel's like, sir, I'm so sorry. She was not supposed to ask about your wife. He's like, it's okay, Daniel. I have a feeling that this young woman is used to being underestimated. We'll use that. But it's like she didn't get her phone back because Daniel has it. She's out of the office. So there's a local author signing. It's for Heather, the doc. She has a therapy book or something like that. Live Without Fear. She's asked about her next book. She's doing a little talk or whatever. And she says that it's about personas and the masks that we have. And then there's this sketchy dude in the audience. It's like, okay, what does this guy want? So then she's signing books. The sketchy dude comes up. He's like, I love your work. And she's like, thank you. And he's like, Dr. Glenn, I need help. Are you are you taking any new clients? And she kind of like started. She's like, I can always move things around. She's like, here's my email. I'm sure we can work something out. He's like, thank you, truly. Then a man behind her hands a book. We don't see his face. He's like, could you? And she's like, of course. Then we see it's Buck. So why is Buck there to see her? At a cemetery, it's like after the funeral for the dead officer, Fisk shows up. Then the commissioner, he sees him, and he reluctantly goes over to him. He's like, it's a classy move, turning up to a police funeral after it ended. And Fisk is like, I didn't want to distract from the ceremony, Commissioner. I did need to talk to you. And Commissioner's like, I wonder how it feels for a guy like you to come to a place like this. Are you even capable of feeling guilt or remorse? And Fisk is like, guilt? I didn't kill Officer Shanahan. And the Commissioner's like, maybe not him, but plenty of others. And he scoffs. He's like, still makes no sense to me, this mayor thing. So you gave up your criminal empire for what? So you could have less money and less power? And Fisk is like, how are we going to fix this issue? And Gallo's like, do you know who Samuel Vance was? No, of course you don't. Mayor Vance was the mayor of New York in 1874. He served for 1 month. It is my personal mission to make sure that your term is shorter than his. I see right through you, Fisk. You're not a mayor who loves the city. You're a whiny kid who wants everyone to love him. A monster trying to rewrite his legacy. And it's like, ouch. But he's totally right. And he's like, well, guess what? It's too late. Once a thug, always a thug. See you around, Kingpin. And he walks away. And Fisk maintained his composure throughout all that. He didn't even make eye contact. So it's like, whew. Kristen talks to Hector's wife. Her name's Soledad. She says that he needs her. It's important that she's seen in court. And she asks Kirsten and Cherry, because he's there with her, to be straight. She says that she's seen the paper and all that. Does he have a chance? And Cherry's like, an NYPD cop is dead? Anytime that happens, a big machine gets turned on to try to figure out what went wrong and to punish whoever kills a cop. Like, punish them severely. And the machine has no off switch. It just goes on until somebody pays. But Matt Murdock and this woman here are two of the best lawyers I've ever seen. Now, if I could just get Hector's suit for court, she's like, it's on the bed, I can get it. And he's like, no. He's like, just sit here and talk to Kristen. He's like, I can get it. So Kristen says that, whatever's going on between them, she's really hoping that she can set it aside because he needs her. She's like, he needs me or he needs me to show up in court. So there's some tension between them. Cherry looks around the room. Soledad says that Hector isn't the man she married. So Cherry opens this. He looks around where he looks in this wooden box under the bed. There's like a white, sort of leatherish outfit with stripes, and then there's a tiger necklace. So Hector is White Tiger. Matt is out with Heather. They're having dinner. They're joking, making plans. Because they're just joking. She talks about they could go to Belize. Go to the beach, sand, and Mai Tais. And he's like, well, what happens after the Mai Tais? And she's like, well, the possibilities are endless. And she's like, maybe later I can give you a taste. And he almost chokes on his drink. He's like, we'll take the check, please. But then they smiled because he was just joking. So he apologized because Cherry calls. So Cherry's like, guess what I found? At prison, Matt places his phone against like the window, the visiting section. He places against the glass the White Tiger store fighting footage on the glass. He's like, White Tiger, really? Hector's like, you were investigating me? And he's like, we talked for hours and you neglect to tell me that you moonlight as a vigilante. He's like, I wasn't in a suit or wearing my amulet. I had no extra powers. It's not relevant. Matt's like, it's relevant. You hide your identity and go out and solve things the way you see fit. We're trying to position this as a one-off event. And I find out you're going out at night looking for trouble. He's like, I'm not looking for trouble. Someone's got to protect the streets. People are going missing. No one seems to care. It's not like Daredevil's around anymore. And Matt chuckles. He's like, if I can find this out, you better believe the DA's office can. And he's like, let them. The people need a hero. I'm out there every night putting my life on the line for them. And he's like, your wife agree with that choice? He's like, this is a tough case, Hector. A cop is dead.
The only way I can win it is if I know every way I can lose it. So Hector nods. He's like, you're right. I'm sorry. I should have told you. And then he's like, you okay? Sounds like you're in pain. He's like, He's like, Rikers Island is no picnic. It's equal opportunity beatdowns, guards and inmates alike. And Matt's like, all right. He's like, hang in there. Okay, I'll make some calls, see what I can do. So we see Fisk eating in his office. He has like a napkin as a bib. Buck tells him that he's been waiting for 20 minutes. So Fisk is like, okay, let him in. So it's Gallo. Gallo says that he sees he's busy, so he'll get right to the point. He's like, I'm resigning my post, effective tonight at midnight, and due to unforeseen scheduling conflicts, I will not be able to stay on and help with the transition, but you will need a new police commissioner, and he like chuckles. He's like, and guess what? A lot of new cups as well. Goodbye, Fisk. So Fisk has been like looking at papers, not looking at Gallo in the eye. So it's like he doesn't make eye contact with anyone. He's like, before you go, just one thing. You're originally from Philadelphia, and you know that cheesesteaks are great in Philly. He asks Bucks like which one. He says that, and he's like, that's his opinion. He's like, I like one actually outside the city. And he shows the wrapping of the sandwich that he's eating. The Angelos, the king of Russia. Mr. Cashman was kind enough to drive down there and pick me up one for lunch. But under the wrapper is an envelope, and there's like a picture on top. There's like a woman and her son, like eating at a restaurant. So it's like, is that his wife and son, or is that his daughter and grandson? I think it's supposed to be his son, but I don't know. It seems too young. Fisk is like, it was delicious. The concept of compromise, it's been on my mind a lot. So I have some compromise to propose. As far as a pay raise for your police force, 0. And when it comes to overtime minimums, none. And Buck's like, an expanded cadet case? And Fisk is like, yes, that's not happening. So what do you say, Commissioner? Do we have a deal? And he's like, fine, no, I'll stay, but be careful what you wish for. He walks out. Buck's like, well played. And Fisk is like, no, for the most part, men are weak. Any man can be swayed by a single piece of paper. He thought he could keep that child a secret, and the sandwich was disgusting. So then Matt's like, Hector's history as a white tiger has no bearing on this case. The defense moves to suppress. So Hawk, he like scoffs. So I don't know if Matt said, oh, by the way, he's like, this is next level, Murdoch. That guy's a vigilante. And Matt's like, who wasn't in possession of his mystical amulet or the white tiger outfit at the time of the incident? Matt, like, or Hawk, he's I don't like him. He's so rude because he like points to Matt like with his thumb and kind of makes like a face to judge like he's crazy. And he's doing this because he knows Matt is blind. He assumes that he can do this. It's just, I don't know, just so rude. And I don't know. So Matt's like, allowing this type of this is totally inflammatory information will unfairly bias the jurors. It perfectly meets the standards of more prejudicial than probative. And Hawk's like, cut the crap. It speaks straight to the heart of the case. It suggests a pattern of behavior that drove Hector Ayala. And Matt's like, he scoffs. He's like, please. But he continues, to kill Officer Shanahan on that subway platform. And Matt's like, Your Honor, the jury will be deliberating the tragic events of a single evening. The proceedings must rest not on my client's clothing, but what happened that night on a platform. He's like, look, and he like chuckles. He's like, I get it. I do. I get the instinct to allow everything but the kitchen sink in as evidence, but it's not right. And with respect, it's not what you're up there to do. So the judge kind of chuckles and he looks at Hawk. He's like, okay. And Hawk's like, oh my God. And the judge's like, I'm granting the motion in limine, something like that. He's like, the people are directed not to discuss or introduce any evidence of Hector Ayala's life as White Tiger or any act of vigilantism. And Hochberg scoffs. He's like, this is some BS, Jerry. And Matt's like, thank you, Your Honor. So more BB report. This lady says jails are revolving doors now. Police have their hands tied. Nobody's being held accountable. She's sick and tired of being afraid.
Matt stares off at the harbor. He has the Daredevil horn piece in his hand. Cherry comes up to him. Matt asks if he's found a witness, and Cherry says that ghosts are hard to find. And Matt's like, "Isn't that why I hired you?" So he chuckles. He's like, "My ghost busting days are long gone, my friend." He's like, "We're just not finding anything that says the guy is telling the truth." And Matt's like, "Except for the fact that he is." So Cherry's like, "I know this case hits close to home. All the more reason it's dangerous." And Matt's like, "Are you saying my judgment is clouded because of who Hector is?" And Cherry's like, "Because of who you are, because of who you were." And Matt's like, "Nah, this case is about Hector Ayala." And Cherry's like, "Okay, let's say that you're right and I'm wrong. Hypothetically speaking." And then Matt's like, "It's not hypothetical, Cherry. Is it? Is it?" And then he sighs. He's like, I know he was telling the truth." And Cherry's like, "We both know it doesn't matter if you can't prove it. And for what it's worth, I like the Matt Murdock I've seen this year. The guy that went out and found his own way, got out of the kitchen, and wears a normal suit. He's doing some good." So Matt walks off. He runs his hand like an iron fence. He's by a church, and he's thinking back to a sermon or whatever. Then this dude, Powell, comes out of a police station, and he says that he finally finished all his paperwork. So Matt stands listening, and Powell's like, he's like, "I'm headed home." And Matt hears his footsteps. He's following him. He almost gets hit at a crosswalk, but by this cab, even though he had the light. But he's still able to figure out like what building he enters. Heather calls as he's standing across the street. She says that she can't make the reservation tonight because she's meeting a new client. So I'm like, uh-oh, is this the dude from the book signing? Is this like some stalker dude? Is something gonna happen? So she asks if a rain check is good, and he's like, yeah. And then he hears like Powell turn on the TV, and I think he's like watching soccer or something. So then we see Heather signing some papers, and she's like, "These really aren't necessary. It comes with the office. Buck is there." So it's not the other guy. And he's like, "We appreciate your discretion." So he opens the door to the other room. "Allow me to introduce the mayor and Mrs. Fisk." So they sit like on opposite ends of a sofa. So it's a little awkward, tense. And so Heather's like, "So I usually like to start off with a couple of questions. What sparked you to come to therapy, and what would you like to get out of it? And Vanessa, why don't you start off?" She's like, "My husband and I have been through a lot these last couple of years. Until very recently, we ran a complex business. Then Wilson left, disappeared really." And Heather's like, "I'm curious to hear more about that. Wilson?" "I was assaulted by a vigilante." Which is like, it was someone you raised as your daughter. It has nothing to do with the fact that she was a vigilante. He's like, "The recovery process, it was quite involved. I couldn't stay in touch with Vanessa. I couldn't stay in communication with her. It was for the best." It's like, why? That makes no sense. So Heather's like, Was it for the best for you, Vanessa?" They both answer, "I think in some way it was." And she's like, "In some ways." So then she's like, "I took over the business. It thrived. It had never been more profitable. And relationship between management and labor was robust and fulfilling for both sides." And Heather's like, "But was your husband's absence fulfilling for you personally?" And she's like, I was lonely. I missed Wilson. Then he returns, and I really don't know how I feel about that. Why are we here? Because it doesn't feel like we have a choice." So then Heather's like, "I'd like to hear from you, Wilson." "I'm here because I don't want to lose my wife." So Matt's still across the street. It's like nighttime now. He hears Powell's phone ring. So Powell's like, "What?" And the officer on the phone says, "Found him." And Powell's like, "All right, I'll meet you there." And the guy's like, "We doing this now?" And he's like, "Yeah." So the guy's like, "He's at 950 West 185th Street, apartment 30. So then Powell's like, "Meet you out front." And then you hear a chick, like a gun cock. On his phone, Matt's like, "Call Cherry." She's like, "I need you to drive to Fort Tryon Park quickly." So then Matt's at the apartment, knocking at the door. Inside, some guy named Nicky. He's like, "Who is it?" And Matt's like, "My name is Matthew Murdock. I'm a lawyer. I represent Hector Ayala, the man who saved you on the subway platform." And he like looks in the peephole. He's like, "Look, I know
you know who I am, and I know you're scared, but I'm here to help you. You can trust me. He opens the door, and Matt just walks in. He's like, thank you, shut the door. He's like, what's your name? He's like, Nikki Torres. And Matt's like, Nikki, you are the key witness in my defense of Hector Ayala. To be blunt, you're the only person standing between him and consecutive life sentences. And he's like, I can't, man. I can't. If I go against the cops, it's going to be really bad for me. And Matt's like, it is already bad for you. They have located you. They're coming to kill you. You need to come with me now. He hears like muffled footsteps come running up the stairs. He's like, poop. He's like, they're already here. Nikki, you have about 20 seconds before they bust in. And he's like, look, man, I don't even know who you are. And he's like, 10 seconds. They're coming. He's like, how do you know you're not? Then he's like, go out the fire escape. Go. There's like banging on a door. Paul's like, NYPD, open up. And Matt's like, Nikki, I have a guy in Fort Tryon Park. He's going to find you. He's going to keep you safe. And he's like, NYPD, open up. Matt turns the lock on the door. Powell enters, and there's another guy with him. Matt just stands there, smiles. And Powell's like, you're a lawyer. And he's like, if you're looking for the man Hector Ayala saved on the subway platform, sadly, he's no longer here. The other guy like closes the door. That's not good. So he walks up and Matt kind of blocks him. He's like, move. And he grabs Matt, slams him against the wall. He's like, move. And then when he does that, he's got like a tattoo on his wrist. I was like, is that a Punisher tattoo? So I don't know if it was. It was definitely like a skull. And I don't know, because Punisher is supposed to appear. I don't know if that's what that's about. So the other guy's like, he's not here, because he looked around. Matt smiles. And Powell takes off Matt's glasses, tosses them on the floor, which is rude. And he slams them against the wall again. Where'd he go? And Matt's like, listen, man, I'm visually impaired. I'd love to help. And then Powell punches him in the gut. Matt goes down. The other guy kicks him, hits him, kicks him again. Powell kicks him. So it's like, oh my gosh, you're seriously doing this? They hit him like maybe 4 more times, and then a big punch like knocks him down, and blood's like dripping on the floor. So Matt like staggers to his feet. They stare at him, and then the one guy's like, go ahead. And Powell's like, he's a lawyer. Then he's like, I'll do it. And Matt's like, no, don't do this. Don't do this. You don't want to do this. The other guy holds his gun up to Matt's head, and then Matt grabs the gun, like twists his arm, shoves him like into Powell, knocks him down. He wrestles the gun out of the other guy's hand, and he like snaps his arm, like breaks it like backwards. That was pretty bad. He screams in pain. He gets twisted around. And he like slams his head down on the table. He's out. Powell grabs him like to try to tackle Matt. Matt like twists, flings him against the fridge. Like his face must hit it because there's like a blood splotch on there. He grabs him, slams him against the fridge again, then flings his face down like onto the ground, like face first. And he catches his breath. He picks up his glasses. One lens is kind of cracked, and then he's like, ah! He lets out a big yell. So this is bad news. It's like, what can you do about this? I mean, are they gonna know? But then they can't really say anything, but he can't. It's quite the pickle he's got himself into. So see, that is a good ending, because that is a cliffhanger ending. So now we have to wait a week, or less than a week, but so we're off to a good start. So that was good. That was a Daredevil Born Again. Okay, and now the movie feature is Mickey 17. So this is Robert Pattinson. There's quite a few people in here. So this is directed by Bong Joon-ho, who the last movie I think was Parasite, which is a crazy movie. I should watch that again. Also in this movie, Steven Yeun, Toni Collette, Mark Ruffalo. I mean, so there's a big cast. Now, it's a weird movie. It's sci-fi. I think it's like 2054 where it takes place. Wikipedia says it's a science fiction dark comedy, and it is. It's actually based off a book from 2022, which I didn't even realize is called Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. And apparently what Bong Joon-ho did, so he wrote and directed this, based off the book. And this is interesting because they kind of did this with Annihilation, because like they wrote the Annihilation movie before the trilogy. I think even before the second book was done or something like that. So that's why if you've read the Annihilation books, that trilogy
and saw that movie, which has nothing to do with Bong Joon-ho, but there's different. So here, the movie was written based off like an early draft of Mickey 7, and apparently there's some differences. They kind of changed things a bit. They added a little more comedy and stuff, and obviously of Mickey 7, Mickey 17, there's that difference. So I'm really curious to read the book, or actually listen to Audible, probably what I'll do. And it's I didn't really know what to expect. So you see the preview, obviously there's like cloning involved, and there's different Mickeys. So because it's Bong Joon-ho, he tends to put in like some social commentary, and this movie has quite a bit. But I think some people, maybe, I'm assuming some people might be a little put off about what they're trying to say. But if that's the case, that, I don't know, that's not a really good thing. But what's interesting also is apparently Robert Pattinson kind of added some of the humor and stuff to this to kind of spice it or spruce it up a little bit, because I think the book is a little more serious than I think that's what I heard. It might say this on page, but I'm not going to read this. What the movie is about is Robert Pattinson and Steven Yeun. They need to leave Earth, and they're gonna get a ride like on this ship that's gonna take off, and Steven Yeun I think is like a pilot, so he can get on there. And Robert Pattinson, he doesn't have any specific skills, so he signs up he applies as an expendable. And like when he's at the, talking to this girl at the counter, she's like, "Are you sure? Did you read the pamphlet or what it's about?" And he's like, "Yeah," but he didn't. So being an expendable means that you basically do dangerous, horrific jobs. You're probably going to get killed. And if you get killed, they're just going to clone you and bring you back. Because they have cloning technology. It's been banned on Earth. But since they're leaving Earth, it's okay. That's where like some of the comedy comes in, like some of the different ways he dies, and that kind of, makes it a little quirky, I guess, in a way. And Mark Ruffalo, he's kind of like a real horrible guy type of thing, and they're looking to basically colonize this other planet, but they're going to do things according to their methods, and yeah, I don't want to give away too much, but then like just things happen. So one thing happen. I guess I should back up a little bit. So what makes this movie even more quirky is, okay, I'll give this up. On the planet, there's like these creatures on there. So they're looking at, well, we can't, are these creatures dangerous, or what are these creatures about? And if they can't, depending on what they're like, could determine, is it safe for them to colonize there? So Mickey 17 is sent out there, some other people out. He ends up, I don't know if this is too much. He ends up falling like in this cavern type of thing, and he's kind of injured or whatever. It doesn't look like he's going to make it out. And then the other guy is like, "Oh yeah, I can't reach you with this rope that I have, so I'll let them know that you're down here, and they'll just make you another copy. So I'll see you in like an hour or whatever." So they end up making another Mickey, but Mickey 17, which I won't say how, he ends up making it back to the ship. That's why there ends up being two of them, because you're not supposed to have more than one person. That's like a hard rule that like Mark Ruffalo had set. And if there's I think if there's more than one, that they both get destroyed. So we have stuff like that. Now, the other thing, what makes this interesting, Robert Pattinson, he's a great actor. And I know a lot of people are like, at least not so much anymore, which is nice. Because a lot of people are like, oh, he's, in Twilight, he can't act, or that's a bad movie, and, all this stuff. But then now, if you've seen, like, just any other movies that he's done, he can put in a performance. And, of course, now there's a lot of people that like him because he's Batman and everything like that. So he's a good actor, and he's very versatile in all this. And with the different Mickey, he's kind of does different personalities. And like the Mickey 17 and Mickey 18 are like really different. There's like something happened to Mickey 18 to make him, and again, I don't know if I'm saying too much. So he's basically, for the most part, or for the majority part, he's playing these two different Mickeys. And he's interacting with himself, and I always find that interesting when they do that, because you have to film it kind of twice, and it just makes it harder to do the scene. And there's just a lot of weird things happening, and it's just so, like I said, there is some like social commentary stuff, but it's not anything that's going to be distracting or annoying or like shoved in your face. It's just part of the plot, and just watching everything. It's I find it fascinating, and it's a long movie. It's like, I think it's like 2.5 hours, or maybe it's 137 minutes. Okay, so if it kind of feels a little long, and I'm sure some people are going to feel it's too long. I kind of like long movies because you get more to story. So because of the length, it does make it feel like just like an experience. Like last week, or last episode, I talked about Last Breath, and that was 93 minutes or something like that. So this is bam, bam, bam. But they did a good job with it. They told the story. They just didn't pad it or anything here. They're not really padding the story here, but I'm sure some people are going to be like, oh, this is so long. But I just thought it's more that we get to see. So it was just. It was a pretty interesting movie, and I definitely want to see it again. So like, I know like pre-orders are already available on 4K, so I'm probably gonna make the plunge. But yeah, it's just a bizarre experience. The movie itself, the budget was 118 million, and it looks like it's made 11.5 so far. It'll make more because it's early in the weekend. And let's see, it grossed 2.5 in the United States, Canada, 9 million other territories. South Korea, it made 1.7. So it's the highest post-pandemic debut by Warner Brothers, which was previously set by Pattinson's The Batman. It made 9 million opening weekend. In the United States, it's projected to gross 18 to 20 million opening weekend. It made 2.5 million on Thursday previews. And then this says the film needs to gross 240 to 300 million worldwide to break even. So it might be kind of tough. Rotten Tomatoes, it looks like it went down a little bit. Critic score is at a 78%. Audience score is at a 76%. So that's actually higher than I thought, because I feel like it would just be too long for people. Audience reviews. Andrew says, best movie of the year so far. Deborah says, worst movie ever, do not waste your money. So it's funny, like, they conflict with each other. So yeah, 5 out of 5 stars and 0.5 out of 5. Okay, Deborah, you're whatever. Toxic Mega Colin says, hilarious movie, great stories, had me dying laughing at certain parts, must see, 5 out of 5. IGD, acting was great, story meandered a little, and the political satire was a bit too on the nose for my liking, but I appreciate the interesting ideas and the execution. So, I mean, there's different things. So it's definitely worth seeing. But you have to be able to handle elements of sci-fi. It's not like laser gun shooting sci-fi or anything like that. And it is, like I said, it kind of feels a little long at times, but it's an interesting movie. And I like I said, I definitely want to see it again. And Robert Pattinson's great, and Toni Collette was just like she's always amazing. Mark Ruffalo he does a good performance. I didn't like his character, so you should definitely see it. I don't think there's much more to say about it. It's great. I'm trying to think of like what movies I've seen this year. It's definitely one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I don't think it may not be like my top favorite movie, but it's definitely up there. I did really like it. So you should check it out if you can handle this movie. And I think you can. So there you go. That is going to be it. See it. See his other movies too. Bong Joon-ho's movies. They're something. They're pretty cool. And, and the thing is, like, you mentioned, like Snowpiercer. They made a friggin' TV show out of that, and there's so much like commentary in there. So it's like I said, it's not like just shoved in your face stuff. I mean, it's part of the story and a narrative, and it's definitely worth checking out. So that is it. See the movie. It's good. Thank you for listening. That's going to be the podcast for the week. So I hope you enjoyed it. There was a lot. Hopefully it was enough. Next week's movie will be Novocaine. So this says Jack Quaid. It's a dude. He doesn't feel any pain. It looks pretty interesting. It also has Amber Midthunder, who was in Prey, that Predator movie. But it also has Ned Leeds from the Spider-Man movies. So we'll see how it is. And then, of course, we're going to have more Daredevil, we'll have The Last Prime Target. There are more Severance. I think there's like 10 episodes, right? A Severance. And then The Last Cobra Kai. And comics and news. So that is going to be it. I hope you are doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you're taking care of others. And I hope you remember, be good to each other.